tell her. You got your book there?
Oh yeah. Let me read some of it.
You don't have to do. You don't have to do that.
That's rich. Look, I'll tell you something.
Yeah, what's up, pal?
This is not a memoir. It says my memoir on it.
Oh yeah, well, I thought this was a memoir. I thought this was.
No, it only says a memoir on it, but it's a novel. I don't know. So, I was angry when it was in the nonfiction.
Yeah.
Because it's a memoir. It says a memoir. It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It's like if you bought Grapes of Wrath. You're like, hey, there's no grapes.
Yeah.
Or you put in the grape section. That's smart.
Yeah.
Then everybody will find Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah.
People that like grapes.
Okay, listen. Norm, settle down.
Have I made my point?
You made your point.
If this was a memoir, if this were a memoir, I would put juicy things from my own life.
Right. Like what kind of things would you put in there that nobody knows?
I got a wife.
You got a wife?
I just got married because I thought go through that charade, keep appearances up.
Oh, yeah.
That's the kind of thing you'd tell if this were a memoir.
If this were a memoir.
Right.
If this were a memoir, I would tell about my wife. What a battle axe.
Battle axe?
I mean,
no one's called their wife a battle axe since 1945.
Leslie, come. How do you feel about a woman? She's supposed to be my life partner. I look in the mirror the other day and I says to her, honey, I look in the mirror and all I see is a fat, ugly old man. And I need you to give me a compliment. She says, all right then. Your eyesight is damn near perfect. I said, you dirty dog.
You called her a dirty dog?
A dirty dog.
A dirty dog.
We have fights constantly.
Oh, you do you?
Oh, and sometimes it bleeds over. Like we were driving in a car. We went past a bunch of animals. There was a pig, a cow. And I admit this was a little cruel.
You were kind of mad at her at the time.
I was mad at her. So I said, hey, you see that pig, that cow, horse? That remind you of any of your relatives? She says, yeah, my in-laws. I said, you dirty dog.
Oh, wow. Wow. Dirty dog again. Wow.
I tell you, until I met my wife, I always felt incomplete. Now I'm finished. But I will say this.
What is going on?
I will say this.
Alrighty, welcome everyone to Redoubt. Tonight we have a smattering of stories concerning heretical priestesses, Catholic infighting, would-be assassins, and some atheists as well. So, we are going to get to all of that. I am one of your hosts, James, and joining me today, as per our usual arrangement, we have John from Focus Trip and Christian. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well, man.
Fantastic.
Doing
Christian,
great.
how are you, sir?
Hanging in there. Nothing too crazy going on.
All right, what are you drinking?
Just water and my typical sparkling water.
Fantastic. But not from the demon worshipping.
No, sir.
Satan blessing. Yeah.
I've thoroughly boycotted that brand.
Yeah. I never fact checked it, John, but I'm just taking your word.
I did, and it was true. At some point, they were blessing them by witch doctors. So.
All right. Well,
I don't know if they continuously do that, but they did at some point. At least is what I put. Yeah. Still, I'm not going to drink that.
Makes sense. John, how are you, sir?
Good. Glad to be here. Still slowly recovering. Mostly past the sickness, but happy to be here tonight. All that I'm drinking, well, a couple things, but the most important one is the rainbow sherbet. Rain. Keep me going.
Excellent. And I'm drinking back to 12-year Glenmorangie, which is an old classic, just a great basic Scotch, single malt Scotch. And one of the things I love about it is it's about a $45 to $50 bottle, depending on where you get it. And it is significantly better than a Macallan 12. So they're both 12-year Scotches. This one is about 30% the cost, and in my opinion, significantly better. Macallan 12 is one of the most overrated Scotches that there is. It is just fine, but really the only thing good you can say about it is that it is smooth. It is very, very inoffensive, which, for people that don't like whiskey, it can be a great option, but that's kind of the best thing you can say about it. All right, we are going to jump into the show, but if you don't mind, go ahead and give us a like. And we are so close to that 1,000 subscriber mark. So if you have not subscribed yet and you're watching this, please do subscribe. We would love to tip it over the 1,000 subscriber count. We really do appreciate you all being here. All right. So, before we get into our clips, I have a couple thoughts that I wanted to share with you guys. A couple things I was thinking about this week. Just a bit of, I guess, interpersonal advice. Two things specifically, and these are just things that I've really tried to cultivate in my own friendships and my own conversations, and I hope you find them helpful. I certainly have in my own experience. So the first is know what you believe and why. And, we've talked before about the importance of just asking the question why repeatedly to yourself about any particular belief, and you can trace back the lineage of things that leads you to accept that particular belief, right? So if you're Catholic, just kind of take any one aspect of Catholicism and ask, why do you believe that? And, pretty quickly you're going to get to your assent to the teachings of the church writ large. And then you ask, why do you believe that? And, you're going to get to a category shift in terms of why you believe some of these more fundamental things, where you're kind of transitioning from more of the syllogism or the deductions to more of the inductive evidence for why you believe a particular thing. Same goes for your belief. Any conclusion can be traced back, or you can start with any conclusion and trace it back to its presuppositions through this process of simply asking why. And what I have found is that this really clears up a lot of the ecclesial angst, but just angst in general about debate or research. If you know why you believe, first of all, what you believe. It's important to know what you believe. That's the table stakes. But then knowing why you believe those things, it doesn't mean that you're not going to change them. You might change your beliefs, but at least if you do change your beliefs, you know that you're changing them in the correct fashion. You're changing them on the basis of challenged presuppositions, which is really, if you have a well-formed worldview, that's the only thing that should result in a change to your broader worldview is challenged presuppositions. And so it just brings a great amount of clarity. And so then when you're watching someone else who's much more intelligent than you, who is making great points in any particular debate, if they are coming at it from different presuppositions, then simply because they are presenting great evidence does not necessarily have to make you lose faith in your whole worldview, unless their evidence is so strong inductively that it actually makes you challenge your presuppositions, in which case maybe you should rethink your worldview. So it just provides me a good deal of clarity when consuming information from various thinkers, and it makes me really completely unafraid to talk to anyone. And it's part of why I don't really debate, because I think that debating tends to result in just talking past each other, because you have people talking at the conclusion level rather than getting down to the postulate level, especially in these formal debates where everything is just so scripted and it's, they usually aren't able to, because of the nature of the debate and the nature of the audience there, they can't really give in any ground. And so if you are too kind to your opponent, then they'll use that against you. And so you really have to stay at the conclusion level and just hammer in, dig in on your points, rather than actually trying to understand each other and maybe even cede some ground for the sake of argument or for the sake of understanding. I'll give you an example of the conversation I had with Joshua, the Orthodox, which, we had some disagreements, but I didn't see that as a debate at all. I could tell very quickly that we were coming from totally different worldviews and perspectives and hermeneutics in terms of how we were reading and interpreting Scripture. And so I was just there to learn and understand his perspective. And it really helped me a lot in understanding how Orthodox thinkers go about doing theology and consider certain topics in a way that I didn't know before. But again, hearing those challenges, and at times he was very upfront in terms of sort of not aggressive, but he was, calling me out in terms of things that he thought I was in error. But I don't take that any offense to that, and it really doesn't even shake my worldview, because I understand that one would naturally arrive at those different conclusions if they had a different set of presuppositions. So that's just the first thing. That's been really helpful to me. We've talked on that a little bit before, but I wanted to include that. The second piece of advice is, this is something I got from well, I'll tell you the origin in a little bit. First of all, it's when you're engaging in conversation, rather than thinking, if someone says something, rather than thinking, is that true? Think, what is true about that? Where is the truth in that statement, right? So when someone says something to you from a different paradigm, from a different world perspective, or even from a similar perspective as your own, but rather than immediately jumping into criticizing it, rather than immediately jumping into, is that statement in its entirety true, as I understand it, ask what is true about that statement, which will all of a sudden put you in the mind of the other person. It'll give you some more empathy. It'll give you the ability to relate to how could they think that that's true. And also, maybe is there some nuggets of truth in it? Maybe is it 85% true, and then there's this one part, this big part that I disagree with. This is a much more effective way of going about productive conversations, and it's also it's not just something to take into debate or conversations that are antagonistic. It also is just a better way to be a friend, or to have productive, thriving, good conversation. So when I first heard this tip, it was in a book by Michael Lewis, I believe, called the name escaped me, but it's about Danny Kahneman and Amos Tversky, The Undoing Project. That's the name of the book. It was a good book, kind of all over the place, but it accomplishes its role well. The thesis is a little bit overbroad, but it's still a good book. So The Undoing Project by, I believe, Michael Lewis, and it's about two Israeli psychologists. I know that'll turn some people off, but it's okay. They're important thinkers and economists, and important psychologists. They had an important impact on economics. But one of the elements, the motifs of the book is exploring one of the themes really, is exploring their friendship and what allowed them to be so productive as a duo. And one of the big things that I think Kahneman said is, when we were talking, we wouldn't shoot down each other's ideas, which is unusual for Jews. They're always arguing and shooting down each other's ideas, stereotypically. But they would actually just sort of take it, even if it sounded a little crazy, and they would try to find where the truth was in it, and then that allowed them to sort of synthetically move on from there and find new truths and deeper truths. So I really think that can be a very helpful tip, just in terms of everyday conversations with your wife, your friends. Just leads to more interesting conversations. It also helps in terms of, it prevents you from putting your foot in your mouth. I think of so often in some of these YouTube debates or YouTube comment sections, if you come in really hot from the get-go, it's very hard to back down from that. And so when you see someone say something that might sound a little stupid, if your goal is just to troll, then that's fine. But if you want to actually have anything deeper than that, then trying to look for maybe where is the truth in that statement, even if I disagree with most of it, maybe what part of it is true, and then you can actually go a little deeper. Not that that's what YouTube comment sections are for; they're for fighting, but it's all fun. And then finally, on this point, still, this idea of looking for the truth, even in potentially overall false statements or false ideologies, will actually help you avoid the reactionary pendulum that we so often see in online discourse. Or just political discourse in general, and even in religious discourse. Because what happens is bad people will say bad things, and then good people notice those bad things, and they assume that the opposite must be true. And then, they craft the worldview around the opposite of these bad things. But the problem is, every lie, every good lie, the most perverse lies, and usually the ones that are the most successful, have kernels of truth, right? Communism is largely a perversion of Christian charity, and unity even. Workers of the world unite. And so if you simply make your worldview anti-communism, then it's much closer to like a libertarian perspective, and you miss a lot of the actual truths that this ideology is perverting. I think a very similar thing happens with feminism, which is, rotten to the core. But there are a few kernels of truth, mainly in sort of the critiques they were making, mainly in terms of what the Industrial Revolution did to women's place in the world, as well as World War II, both just completely shook the world of women, and feminism was largely a reaction to that, or sort of a product of that. And the reaction to feminism often denies the fact that the world is different, that the world has actually changed, and the world that women live in has just necessarily eroded. So many of the cottage industries that women used to hold no longer are really an option for women. So they have to find other things to do, and these pose challenges, legitimate challenges. And so we need a worldview that actually looks into that and takes that seriously. So because you have these kernels of truth in these bad ideas, if you simply look for only the bad and then and don't look for any of the truths in these bad ideas, then you're actually going to end up with not the truth. You're going to end up with another lie. You look at a lie and then you simply reverse it and you end up with another lie, because that initial lie had elements of truth. If it was a good and successful lie, that's usually how those lies work. So that is something that is worth avoiding. Anyways, so that's it. The 2 pieces of advice. Know what you believe and why, and when you're talking to people, don't just shoot down ideas willy-nilly, but actually look for maybe the truth. Don't ask, is that true, but ask, what's true about that? I found those both to be very helpful in my everyday life. John, Christian, any thoughts on that?
It's a very ecumenical, kind way to dialogue with people. I mean, maybe I have a little bit of pushback when it comes to debate, like specifically, like the goal is to destroy somebody else's worldview. So of course it's antagonistic. It's a debate with a winner and a loser, right? It's like getting into a fist fight and being like, well, I really don't like that we damaged each other's faces in the middle of this. It's like, well, kind of the point, right? So I think debate absolutely has a wonderful, great place in society and thought and modern life and whatnot, and all the way back to ancient times as well, of course. So I think that it's a very useful tool, but not everything is a debate. And so there's been elements where everyday conversation has been debatetized. That's not a right word, but something like that, to where every confrontation you get into is, well, I'm going to destroy you, even though we're having like just a very normal conversation, right?
It's not the best way to make friends, especially if it's just like an individualistic conversation between two people. You're trying to get someone to come over onto your side. A man convinced against his will typically remains the same man still, is the old adage, right? So, yeah.
Well, the thing about debate is that it does a good job of showing who the better debater is, but not actually showing what's true. Father DeYoung, Orthodox priest, I believe priest, made this point where he was talking about Jay Dyer and how there's not a lot of people that do effectively debate him. But he doesn't watch those debates usually, or the debates that Jay does do, because it's just Jay beating on someone, and it's not actually an effective way of getting the truth. Even though Father DeYoung does agree with Jay's points, he just feels like they don't really they don't necessarily do a good job of communicating truth, because perhaps there's such an imbalance. Or this can certainly apply to debates in general. Very often they simply show who is a better debater, who is better at thinking on their feet, but not necessarily what's true, which is why I think debates are actually appropriate in like political settings. I like political debates, because one of the most important things, or an important thing in politics, is being able to think on your feet and think quickly. And it almost is an aptitude test for politicians. And that's helpful in terms of determining who you want to vote for. But in terms of determining ultimate truths, an aptitude test between two contestants is not really the way to get to that.
But I don't even know if it's necessarily meant to determine truth. It's two worldviews, usually, is what it is. So it's throwing up two worldviews, two presuppositions basically against each other, and seeing which one actually holds water. So I don't know if it's actually searching for truth. It's
which
it's
one is true, right? Isn't that, I mean,
basically,
what does hold water mean if not is true, or is more true?
Yeah. Well, again, but it's not like trying to come to an understanding of the meaning of life. It's like, here's my idea of what the meaning of life is. Here's your idea of the meaning of life. Which one of these two in opposition works better? Right.
Right.
So, and again, it's by definition, it's only two sides on it.
Right. Yeah. But I'm just saying that the person who wins said debate is not necessarily the one who actually has the better position. It is possible to win a debate with a worse position. Happens.
No, yeah.
All right. we can jump into the clips. The first one we have up. Well, the women are at it again. I don't know what order you have, John. Do we have the Archbishop first?
I heard that. Wait, what is
Good one,
screen
dude.
sharing? Why did my screen sharing say no? Okay, there we go. So this is the Archbishop of Canterbury, which is, just a thing, I suppose, these days. This photo is a disgrace to the entire Catholic world, translated from Spanish. Today, Mrs. Sarah Mullally. Wait, what is her husband?
What do you mean in the context of what? Like,
Well,
religion-wise, or?
is she the first husband of the Archbishop, or
Oh, I have no idea, dude.
what is that? Does he have an official title? Right, because an Orthodox priest's wife would be she would have some sort of honorific title, right? So I'm wondering what if the first husband has a title. Anyways,
Not gonna be found in the
Funny
Bible, that's for sure.
funny things that we shouldn't have to wonder about.
Right,
Today, Mrs. Sarah Mullally, who thinks she's the Archbishop of Canterbury, pretended to give a blessing in the Clementine Chapel in the crypt of the Vatican Basilica. It is the chapel closest to the tomb of St. Peter. As if that's not bad enough, there is a Catholic priest next to him. Now, this is one of those things that I just don't understand from a Catholic
No,
perspective.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, how from a Catholic perspective can you steel man this position? Like, how in any way could you? I can't even think of anything.
I get uncomfortable when some of the churches I've been a part of, they've done, as part of the regular service, they'll do like a congregational prayer, and they'll pray for, like, one of the churches picked a local church in the community every week, and it was a different church, and they would pray for the pastor and they'd pray for the congregation. And whenever it was one of those churches with a lady pastor, I was like, I don't know that I feel comfortable about this. Like, I get it. We can still sort of offer general blessings or ask for God's blessing on them. Maybe one of those blessings would be removing the female pastor. But
Well, yeah, you got to pray for
this
too,
feels
right?
weird. Like, yeah, I don't like
Well,
it.
especially if somebody's like, "Yeah, I really hope you bless her ministry and her work life,
Right, exactly.
and
It's like
grow her
not
congregation."
phrasing
and
I'm
it's
comfortable with. Yeah.
Okay, so
I guess,
Catholics
like-
have banned still, even though it's debated, even though there was some like, oh, maybe we'll look into having deaconesses or whatnot. Catholics have been steadfast. No female priests, no female bishops. It's not a thing. It's not real. You can't be ordained. If somebody does ordain you, it's excommunicable. You cannot do this. So why in the world would the Vatican not only like meet with her because she is a faith leader, right? She is an important figure. So the Pope meets with political figures who also believe in heresies and whatnot. So it's like, okay, but you would allow her to come in to perform one of her blessings as a heretic, according to your own worldview, next to the tomb of St. Peter, which she considers herself a successor of St. Peter. Like, it seems like mockery.
I guess from the Catholic perspective, the only argument you could make is in the sake of ecumenism and possibly trying to bring them back into the fold at some point. But I don't even see that as a valid argument, honestly.
Well, because I mean, the Vatican did in their library, they did make a prayer room for Muslims, which
Mhm.
again seems like, no, we're
One
not
could argue that's
having-
worse.
That is worse, I think,
Yeah.
than this, because this is just a woman usurping a man's role within the church, not necessarily a completely antithetical religion that denies the divinity of Christ entirely, right? So, but it's like, yeah, we have our pagan Odin worship room right down the hall too, just because we gotta be nice to those guys, because they're attempting to worship. Don't you know? They're attempting to worship the one true God. They're searching blindly. So we gotta.
Yeah, go down a couple more doors and you'll see a gay mass. Don't worry.
Well, wouldn't it be the same thing? Like, what if
Yeah.
this was a transgender person? Like, isn't
Yeah.
it the same sort of abomination?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't. I don't even understand it from the Catholic perspective, because they don't believe that her blessing is valid.
Right.
They believe that she's sitting there performing.
Well, see, I
some-
don't know. Like, blessing, like, they would believe that her baptisms would be valid, right? If it's done properly, then her baptisms would still be valid baptisms, right? I think Catholics
The
would
people
still
that she's baptized.
right if she has baptized someone, even though she's a lady. If it's done with the right words, Trinitarian, in Trinitarian
In the
fashion,
right-
then
yeah, I think that is.
Yeah. I
their
think it still
argument. If
counts,
it's in the
right? So-
form,
believe so.
it doesn't matter who
so
does it.
maybe it's something similar with blessings. I don't know if that just applies to certain sacraments, because they're so important, and God wouldn't, allow those to, maybe God is more gracious to those. I don't know. So I think that something similar is probably going on with the blessings, but still makes me uncomfortable. Don't like it.
Well, I don't. Is that true? That is wild, though, right? Because should they even accept baptisms done by somebody who's not ordained, right? Because they wouldn't allow you to.
Well, they would
Left
accept
the
it from a
Eucharist.
pastor who is, like in the Presbyterian Church
From a
or even
Protestant.
the.
Well, right, but I'm
you
saying
know,
from
so
the
they're
Catholic
not
worldview.
ordained in a.
No,
in a
no.
Catholic
I understand
perspective.
that they might actually do that, but I'm saying should they, from their own worldview? Does that make sense?
Well,
Right,
I mean, it
because
goes
they
all the way
wouldn't-
back to the Donatist revolt, right? So this tradition is really, really important and really, really old, to where I don't even know that it is explained as much as it is just sort of accepted because it's so old. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of explanations for it, but it's just one of those things that's so old that the explanations might be more like justifications, where, you had these Donatists who were schismatic, right? And they were basically claiming a much more pure church, and they were kicking people out. And for a long time, you had Donatists and the Orthodox branch, fighting amongst each other. And there was a big question of, can you accept the baptisms of the Donatists? And ultimately, the decision was yes. If it's done in Trinitarian fashion, then it is a valid baptism.
Right, but those were still
regardless.
done by men. But my argument is like within the Catholic system, you wouldn't consider it a valid Eucharist unless it's been blessed by a priest, right? So a lay person cannot
No.
do the job of the priest. Right? So if she is not a valid, like she's essentially just laity wearing the wrong clothes and holding the wrong title, according to the Catholic faith, right? So should she even be able to perform blessings or, handle the
I don't
Eucharist
think
or
she
anything
would
like
be able to perform the Eucharistic blessing. So maybe baptism is unique in that regard. I don't know exactly how far that extends. There's a Latin phrase for it that I never can quite remember. So I know some of the words, but I don't want to bungle it.
that? Well, I don't
But I'm
think
not sure
Catholics,
how broad it is.
I don't think Catholics recognize baptisms for the dead because that's a distinctly Mormon practice.
Yeah.
So probably not that one. And again, it has to be done in a Trinitarian fashion, so they wouldn't accept Mormon baptism anyways.
I'm just gonna call it and say maybe like 20, 40 years, you'll probably see women deaconesses and priests in the Catholic Church. I think it's going in that direction. I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form if that did eventually happen at all. I mean, they've regressed on so many doctrines already that this is just, it's one of those that'll go to the wayside again.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
this is what I'm
but
thinking.
That's the trend.
What is with her hair? It has got to be the worst haircut. I mean, I don't know. Not to.
I don't know.
It's not nice to comment on
an
a woman's
old dimmer
appearance,
lady.
but
I'm sure she's a wonderful woman and she would make a great grandma, but she
Yeah.
should not be the Archbishop of Canterbury.
all right.
Yeah. Well, are we on to the next woman? That
The
should
next
also
woman. It's almost like Paul had a point.
Yeah.
Very specific warnings here. There was logic, okay? All right, so we have recreated indulgences, but way worse. Like way worse here. So Paula White, I mean, Donald Trump's faith advisor.
The headline says it all.
Yeah.
Trump's faith advisor selling 7 Easter blessings for a $1,000 gift. So, I mean, I gotta find the clip of her real fast saying wherever she is holy, because she has some absolutely
Dude, that
crazy
CD
clips.
is just a mixtape of her speaking in tongues. I
That's-
hear victory.
Yeah.
So
All right.
bad.
Well, let me read about this. So on her website and social media, televangelist Paula White has a special offer for what she calls the Passover season, when your obedience to align yourself with the desires of God can release 7 specific supernatural blessings for your body, your family, your finances, and your future. White leads the White House Faith Office and recently assembled a group of 17 evangelical pastors to pray over Trump in the Oval Office. She bases her promise of 7 blessings for the gift of $1,000 on Exodus 23, which ironically begins with these words: "You shall not spread a false report. You shall not join hands with the wicked to act as a malicious witness. You shall not follow a majority in wrongdoing. When you bear witness in a lawsuit, you shall not side with the majority so as to prefer to justice." Awkward. And then she states in verse 9, "You shall not oppress a resident alien. You know the heart of an alien, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt." White and her team of spiritual advisors have endorsed and blessed Trump as he lies and seeks to have judgments and peace if they crotch him, which is base. But again, this guy's it's probably a little bit of a lefty article in here. But let's get to here we go. Okay, so for the gift of $1,000 to Paula White's, I'm not going to say church, her company, you can get, as we read in Exodus 23, when you honor God during this Passover with a $1,000 gift, God will assign an angel to you, be an enemy to your enemies, give you prosperity, take sickness away from you. Maybe I should take that. Give you long life, bring increase and inheritance. But wait, there's more. And give a special year of blessing. Call now for the low, low price of $1,000. I didn't check, but how ironic would it be if you could buy a blessing on Klarna or one of these buy now, pay later schemes? So you're paying interest on your blessing. So what happens if you buy the blessing on payments and fail to make the payments? Is there like the angel like
blessing.
takes extra from you? I don't know what happens.
It's a spiritual repossession, man. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Michael comes back and repos your soul. Oh
man.
dear. That's toll houses on another level. All right, so then she relates this testimony to one of her followers named Alfred. All right, Alfred. "I sowed a seed, and as a result of the teaching of giving during this Passover season, as a result, my unemployment benefits were restored and increased this past week." All right.
It's
"My
kinda
family
like
and I are being
reviews.
provided for, and spiritual blessings are evident. I believe the 7." Wait, so this guy's on unemployment, and he took $1,000 out of his pocket to give to Paula White's company.
There must be a financing option.
Right.
There's no way.
Well, listen, maybe that's a good deal. If you can only get for $100 down, you can get all these blessings. Like, that's pretty good.
It pays for itself, man.
Well, that's what the prosperity gospel often is. Like, listen, it's a small sacrifice now for greater gain. I believe the 7 blessings are being manifested in me, and I believe full restoration will take place in my life, career, child, and service to the Lord. Wow. Okay. So, and then you get all of this other stuff here. So you get a cross and some grape juice, ironically. Celebrating the Lord's Supper with Jesus and the apostles while perhaps having the lowest view possible of the Lord's Supper. That's a little obnoxious, isn't it? And you get some Paula White and her.
I gotta say,
second or-
DoorDash Eucharist has got to be the absolute lowest view of the Lord's Supper. Like, I'm extremely critical of the churches that are like Eucharist to go. Like, I don't see that as, I don't know. Maybe there's a way that it's valid. I don't know, but man, like that's offensive to me. But some mega churches will often do that, where it's like, here, have a little grape juice and a cracker on your way out, and that's really bad. This has got to be the absolute worst. I mean, this is not. There's no way that this is valid, because you don't. Well, at least in the Protestant model, you don't really take private communion at all. So it's not something that we do in private. That's mainly a reaction to the Catholic private masses that they would have. But even in the Catholic system, obviously, it requires a priest or someone to administer it properly. But so, in no view is this valid.
Well, did either of you guys watch the Andrew Wilson Trump presidency debate yesterday?
Yeah.
I didn't know. I tuned in for like a few minutes on your stream, and then I put a super chat in, and then when I came back, it was the stream was down. So I don't
The
even
stream
know
was
if,
gone. Yeah, I know.
if it went through, but
No, I showed half of a 2011 and it killed the stream. But on that point, so one of Andrew's points that he was trying to make in this debate was, listen, Trump's done a lot of great things. He established a faith council for the White House. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, Andrew, that cannot possibly count
yeah.
as a positive. Number one, you're Orthodox. You think all of these people are heretics? Like, there's no ecumenism within his worldview. So not only is like, even if she was like a nice Baptist preacher or like a Presbyterian or whatever flavor of Protestant, but more like traditional and reasonable, she would still be a heretic according to Andrew.
Right.
But she's a monster. So this is in no way, shape, or form a good thing that we have a faith council, but it's being led by a obvious heretic charlatan woman, right?
Like, obviously it comes with problems, but I'm not sure that if the faith council is something that outlives her, it could still be a good thing to have it established.
Possible.
It's possible.
What
And
about
one
the
other
next
thing.
presidency?
Well,
Like, imagine Kamala's faith council
Right.
with Hindus, Muslims,
I mean,
whatever it happens to be, and it's the only. I mean, listen, Trump is like, I don't know, like
you're
Trump
kind
is
of making
almost
my
like the
point
best
for me, though,
option.
John. Because
Well, it could be even worse, is what I'm saying. It could be terrible.
Exactly. This is my point. Is when it comes to Trump, you can throw all the criticisms you want at him. There's plenty of things to criticize him about, but the main question when it comes to Trump is compared to what? And
no,
it
that's
could
not-
be so much worse.
But listen, this is already heresy. So you're saying it's already heresy and damnable to hell.
But this at least
it
has
could
some
be-
silver
It
linings.
could be.
I know I'm good at finding.
Maybe.
So, but the other thing is with Trump.
Wait, do you think this is a net positive?
I mean, this no, no way.
Oh.
But the idea of a faith council is
Sure, okay.
is potentially
Yeah,
net
the
positive. And then
idea of-
also Trump's account, like the White House has put out during Trump's term, a lot of very traditional, mostly Catholic-minded posting, celebrating feast days, and we can forget that one Easter Day post.
The
But
one Easter one, yeah.
yeah.
Well, listen,
I
Trump
kinda
has
like
been
that.
really good on like abortion and pro-life stuff. So if you stick to that stuff, like you could say he's the best Christian.
But even on the
president.
faith stuff, it's clear that Trump is sort of a lapsed Presbyterian at best, right? Like, he doesn't seem to take his faith seriously at all. Maybe more since getting shot at. I don't know. I would love to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it doesn't really seem like he takes any kind of faith. And if he does have a faith, it's probably more this Paula White sort of really perversion of the gospel that I don't think
Right.
really
But I'm
amounts to
saying
the
in
gospel
terms
at
of his
all.
actual policies,
But
like
in terms of what he puts out there and what he's willing to, what he promotes and what he is willing to put his name behind, these are positive things in general, right? The idea of having a faith council is a positive thing, even if the person currently at the head is not. And putting out,
well, but again, just faith council doesn't imply Christian faith council, right? So I don't even know. Because, like, to me, if I said, "Oh yeah, I'm assembling a faith council," well, I know what that's going to be.
A society that believes in the concept of God is still better than a society that is purely secular. And we were headed in a purely secular direction, and we are at least under Trump.
China
and who knows how
versus
short this is.
Iran. Which one would you rather live in? China versus Iran.
Oh man, those are both so bad. But even still,
Well, one of them has it in their charter to marry 13-year-olds. The other one has slave labor and
people
bugmen.
can be
But one of them is more secular than the other, though. Iran is ostensibly very, very religious, whereas China is not.
Bad
so
religions can cause people to do very, very bad things. However, we're not a Muslim country, and so if we become more and more godly, to use the term generically, we will more likely trend in a Christian direction because we are traditionally a Christian nation. I think we still have some of those bones in our DNA, and just beyond that, there's a large gap between sort of going from mostly secular, or at least that's the way that the public talked about religion, was just look at the media, look at politicians, very, very secular in terms of their intonations. And Islam is like way over here. So like, I don't think we're going to, jump there. I think that we can just sort of turn the ship, and we don't need to think of a slippery slope where we're going to end up in Islam. And so I think that it is good for us to turn away from secular, because that at least provides us the option of moving in a true direction. I know it's not tons, but again, compared to what? It could always be much, much worse. Of course, the conservative optimist says, it says the old joke is that the conservative pessimist says, it can't get any worse than this. And the conservative optimist says, oh, yes, it can.
Well, here's just a funny little clip of Paula White doing her TED Talk. Because, again, I don't want to call it a sermon, more of a TED Talk, speech, whatever you want to call it.
Go, God rules. When I walk on White House grounds, God walks on White House grounds. I had every right and authority to declare the White House as holy ground because I was standing there, and where I stand is holy.
To say no to President Trump would be saying no to God. And I won't do it.
We're in a spiritual war right now. Let every demonic network that has aligned itself against the purpose, against the calling of President Trump, let it be broken. Let it be torn down in the name of Jesus. You want me to tell you what my thoughts are? The thoughts of the King of Kings, the thoughts of the Lord of Lords. I'm downloading heaven.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, your current administration.
Wow. That was wonderful. I quite enjoyed that.
All right, you've convinced me, John.
Oh, gosh. Woo. Hey, but at least we have a faith office. It's all right. All right, where do you want to go from here? That was funny, dude. I was not expecting the
screaming
desert call out there. Jeez.
Yeah.
Gave a bunch of Desert Storm veterans PTSD right there.
I don't know. It sounded like James Brown. They're just gonna start saying,
Yeah.
feel good."
She was about to start scatting. Yeah.
All right. So next, I had the prior our father Stephen DeYoung. Is it Stephen?
Oh, okay.
I forget his first name.
Were we going to get into the since we're talking about Trump?
Oh no,
Trump
you're right. You're right.
shooting
I inserted that. I just left it out of my version of the show map. Yeah, you got it.
Have you guys? Okay, so you know the guy looks a little zesty. I think you could say at times, the shooter, right? If you've seen some of his photos around, have you guys seen his courtroom sketch yet?
No.
I'm gonna jump scare you. Okay. Boom.
Yeah. That's
just a little off, a little awkward. They must have hired the cheap sketch
really
artist
hastily,
for this
yeah.
one. This is not good. This is your worst work ever. But getting into his manifesto. So Cole Allen says, "Hello, everybody. So I may have given a lot of people a surprise today. Let me start off by apologizing to everyone whose trust I abused. I apologize to my parents for saying I had an interview without specifying it was for quote-unquote most wanted." That's funny. "I apologize to my colleagues and students for saying I had personal emergency. By the time anyone reads this, I probably most certainly do need to go to the ER, but can't hardly call that not a self-inflicted status. I apologize to all the people I traveled next to all the workers who handled my luggage, and all the other non-targeted people at the hotel who I put in danger simply by being near. I apologize to everyone who was abused and or murdered before this, to all those who suffered before I was able to attempt this, to all those who may still suffer after, regardless of my success or failure. I don't expect forgiveness, but if I could have seen any other way to get this close, I would have taken it. Again, my sincere apologies. On to why I did any of this. I am a citizen of the United States of America. What my representatives do reflects on me. I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and a traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. Well, to be completely honest, I was no longer willing a long time ago, but this is the first real opportunity I've had to do something about it. While I'm discussing this, I will also go over my expected rules of engagement, probably a terrible format, but I'm not military, so too bad. Administration officials, not including Mr. Patel, which is an odd call out. They are targets prioritized from highest ranking to lowest. Secret Service. They are targets.
Pause it for a second. That is an odd call out. Is that just because of race? You think he was just trying to avoid brown people?
Well, it's either race or because he thinks Patel is
It's like onto Trump for Epstein?
right. Is
Which I've never heard
subversive
anyone
or
express
ineffective.
confidence in Kash Patel.
Yeah. So I think race is the more likely option. He didn't want to kill him because he's brown.
Yeah.
Right. And even though I think this guy's half white, half black, so
Yeah.
it's not like Patel's not his race. He's a completely different race of person. Anyways, yeah, non-white though. Secret Service. They are targets only if necessary and to be incapacitated non-lethally if possible. AKA, I hope they're wearing body armor because center mass with shotguns messes people up who aren't. Ironically, I think the only shot he got off was with his pump action shotgun, and he did shoot somebody who was wearing body armor. Hotel security, not targets if at all possible, aka unless they shoot at me. Capitol Police, same as hotel security. National Guard, same as hotel security. Hotel employees, not targets at all. Guests, not targets at all. In order to minimize casualties, I will also be bringing buckshot rather than slugs, less penetration through walls. I would still go through most everyone to get to the targets if it were absolutely necessary, on the basis that the most people chose to attend a speech by a pedophile, rapist, and a traitor, and thus are complicit. But I really hope it doesn't come to that. So now he has rebuttals listed out in his manifesto.
This is the part that I wanted to talk about because that was the most interesting because he's responding. He's making a moral case, and much of what he's responding to would be like Christian Bible verses or Christian concepts or sort of like pseudo-Christian ideas that are floating in the ether. And I don't know his personal convictions if he claims to be Christian or raised in that background. But anyways, it piqued my interest that these were the types of things he was responding to. Like these were the moral arguments he felt the need to make. Whereas someone who you wouldn't say render under Caesar if you didn't care at all about the Bible.
Right. Well, he was probably raised in a Christian worldview, would be my guess. Like sort of a lefty progressive Christianity that he grew up with, right? And so I would imagine he's responding to the claims of the people who knew him, who were close to him, his students and whatnot. So rebuttal. Objection number 1. As a Christian, you should turn the other cheek. Rebuttal. Turning the other cheek is for when you yourself are oppressed. I am not the person raped in a detention camp. I'm not the fisherman executed without trial. I'm not a school kid blown up or a child starved or a teenage girl abused by the many criminals in this administration. Turning the other cheek when someone else is oppressed is not Christian behavior. It is complicity in the oppressor's crimes.
What do you think about that?
There's like a little sliver of something there, right? So for instance, if somebody insulted or pushed me in a public setting, I should not respond with deadly force. Probably not. I don't think that's appropriate. If I see him pushing somebody else or being mean or rude, I should probably interject myself in there to save the weaker person. Right. So there's something in here where there are slights to myself that should be ignored. Okay. There are things that I can take and not worry about it. But when somebody else who is not me is under that same threat, I should do something to stop it.
Right. I mean, I think in the main, I think that it is basically a correct line of thinking, although I'll reply to this real quick. I think the fisherman is referring to the terrorist or the drug running boats.
Boats.
They'll target. Yeah, they're saying that innocent fishermen are being killed. The exception I guess I would have is I do not think that you are obligated to turn the other cheek even when the offense is directly against you. I think that Christ's words can be taken generally to mean that we should, like to paraphrase Paul, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. And so we do have an obligation to promote peace and to try to live peacefully, and even to go out of our way and do things that would seem otherwise unreasonable in the pursuit of peace, like going the extra mile and like turning the other cheek. However, that runs up against another command, which is to follow in, it's more of an implicit command, but to follow in Jesus' example of cleansing and protecting and honoring the temple, which in this new Testament time period, that this post-resurrection time period, the temple is our bodies. And so even if it is your own body, you do not have an obligation to let someone abuse your body. You in fact have a duty to protect that as the temple, of the Holy Spirit. So I do think that there is a little bit more there, but in the main, I think that this is a rather correct poke against straight up pacifism.
Right. And I mean, yeah, we're going to argue about the specifics of his call outs, right? So like the fishermen, drug dealers who are flooding the poorest of American streets with drugs, debilitating, number 2 cause of death in the U.S. It's like, I don't know, aren't they the oppressor to somebody else then in that situation?
They'd also be complicit in the crimes too themselves.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, again, it's like, you could say, okay, well, yeah, you blew up school kids on the other side of the planet. Yep, that's terrible. We shouldn't do that. But like Obama dropped more bombs than any president before him. So I don't know, like it seems like we're picking and choosing.
Yeah, the analysis of the facts is completely wrong and unjustifiable. But.
It's like teenage girls abused. It's like, what about all of our own citizens that get murdered by, foreigners? Like, what are we doing here? Okay.
What's so crazy, and even as you continue, what's so crazy is all of what he's saying, they're just common media talking points. Like, this doesn't sound like, I mean, it's obviously deranged, but it doesn't sound out of the ordinary. It just sounds like he heard what people were saying and took it seriously. It's like, so
yeah, I mean, it almost like generic left-wing talking point downloads, right? The NPC meme about the new downloads that they get, and it's like, this is what you're angry about this week.
Right.
It's all the same stuff I've heard. Now, Rat King has a very poignant point. Yes, African Americans in this country have worse than a coin flip chance of actually being born, but don't worry about them. We don't fight for them. We don't care for them. And if you try to fight for the unborn, well, you're a heckin' misogynist and we should kill you or something like that.
But for him, it would be like, what, a half of that percentage? So
yeah, so it's probably like
25%.
He'd probably be like 25,
Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. Okay, so objection 2. This is not a convenient time for you to do this. I need whoever thinks this to take a couple minutes and realize that the world isn't about them. Okay, do you think that when someone is raped, murdered, or abused, I should walk on by because it would be inconvenient for people who aren't the victim? I mean, I don't know who's complaining that, oh, this is a really inopportune time.
Inconvenient time. Like, that's not normally the first response to being assassinated. Like, oh
when
man,
is the convenient time? Like, I would have really preferred it on Friday.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Man, it's really gonna affect the stock market.
Weekend?
Yeah.
Or maybe killing him on, Sunday, Monday, so you don't have to go through the work week. Maybe that's more convenient, Kill me before I start work. Jeez.
I mean, really, the way he did it Saturday evening, I had to wait till Monday to really kind of, because that's when I listened to all my news podcasts. So I had to go a whole day without really any information on this. It really would be more convenient if you did this on like Sunday evening, in which case, just go to bed and then you wake up and the next day you get the news.
There you go.
So
yeah.
I mean,
He
I
wasn't
am
thinking
complaining
about
about
you.
this. Apparently not.
Selfish. Yeah.
Now, the rest of them are just kind of funny. Objection number 3, you didn't get them all. Rebuttal, gotta start somewhere. You literally got no one, which is funny. I mean, it's crazy
I
to think
one
though.
of the Secret Service people got shot by another Secret Service person, I believe. So.
Serious?
Was
think
okay?
so.
I know
Josh.
one Secret Service guy got injured, and the
I think
guy
it might
fired
have
one
been-
shot from his shotgun. So did he get shot by another Secret Service guy, or did he get shot by the shotgun?
I heard it was by another Secret Service person, so I suspect that maybe the shotgun missed, but I don't know exactly.
If true, very funny. Did you see that somebody was also claiming that in the footage of him, Naruto running by, you can see one of the Secret Service members draw their gun and ND into the ground immediately.
No way.
Like as he's going to draw his gun and point at the guy, in the process of bringing it up, like as it's pointed at his
That's
feet, he
sad.
pulls the trigger, right? And just a word on that, like it was crazy that he got as far as he did and how bad the security is at that hotel. Like apparently, if you just you're just really fast, you got a shot, bro. It's
Well, imagine if there had been a team, right? Like
Or just two. Like imagine one guy runs in there, everybody's dogpiling him, doing their thing, and then the second guy just goes, "Well, I'm gonna do the exact same thing now that everyone's."
Right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah, 3 or 4 of them could have probably.
Isn't
broken
that
in.
the same hotel where was it Reagan? Was he shot at that hotel? I think at that same Hilton, or there was an attempted assassination.
I know the event you're talking about. I don't know if it was
I'm
there.
pretty sure that hotel has had another assassination attempt on a president. So like maybe they should stop booking that one for their events. Try the Marriott. Try the Hyatt. I don't know.
Okay, well, objection 4. As a half black, half white person, you shouldn't be the one doing this. What's the?
I don't even.
You're just bringing race into it
Okay,
to bring race
from,
into it. It
from
sounds
the from the left wing paradigm, a black person or a black presenting person shouldn't do it because it makes black people look violent. So you shouldn't be the one doing the crime. Is that the rationale here?
I think you're right.
Okay. And then he just says rebuttal. I don't see anyone else picking up the slack, picking up the cotton. Okay, that's what it should have been. Objection number 5: yield unto Caesar what is Caesar's, which is, again, this is like he has the correct idea here. The United States of America are ruled by the law, not by any one or several people. Insofar as representatives and judges do not follow the law, no one is required to yield them anything so unlawfully ordered. And this is something that Christians do often, like misquote, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and they say it to like, you need to follow like all decrees, and it's this over-encompassing, like everything is the matter of the state, right? So, whereas that's not really the case, right? It's specifically there what Christ is talking about is tax and money separating it, because the Jews are trying to get him to contradict Caesar so that they can have a reason and impetus for, throwing him in prison, crucifying him, or whatnot.
Yep.
I actually don't really disagree with this last part, right? You have no moral, compulsion to follow unjust laws. So yeah, that is. Oh wait, does he have more? He does have more.
Wow.
He has more. Yeah, I don't know if it's all that relevant, but you can read it. Might as well finish it off.
Okay, so I would also like to extend my appreciation to a great many people, since I will not be likely to be able to talk with them again unless the Secret Service is astoundingly incompetent. That is a funny
Spoiler
call-out.
alert.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing.
He's still alive. Thank you to my family, both personal and church. So again, he is some part. I actually want to know what church he's a
Now
part
I'm curious.
of.
Let me look it up while you're doing this.
Yeah. Because if you can find what church he is, we could probably read their About Us section and figure out what they believe.
What's his name?
For your
again?
love. His name is Nathan Cole, right? Cole Allen. Sorry, Cole Allen. Okay, so I would also like to extend appreciation to a great many people. Thank you to my family, both personal and church, for your love over these 31 years. Thank you to my friends for your companionship over many years. Thank you to my colleagues over many jobs for your positivity and professionalism. Thank you to my students for your enthusiasm and love of learning. Thank you to the many acquaintances I met in person and online for short interactions and long-term relationships, for your perspectives and inspiration. Thank you all for everything. Sincerely, Cole, Cold Force, Friendly Federal Assassin, Allen. Not only did he assign himself one nickname, but he went the extra step and has 2 separate nicknames within his name, Cold Force and Friendly Federal Assassin. And then he goes on to talk about how bad the Secret Service is. Okay, now that all the sappy stuff is done, what the hell is the Secret Service doing? Sorry, gonna rant a bit here and drop the formal tone. Like I expected, security cameras at every bend, bugged hotel rooms, armed agents every 10 feet, metal detectors out the wazoo. And there was, basically none of that. He walked in the day before with guns in a briefcase and assembled them in his room, and then just waited for the opportune moment and got as close as he could, got the guns out, ran as fast as he could, and got like 80% of the way there.
So apparently Cole Allen was deeply involved in Christianity during his time at Caltech, where he was an active member and leader in the Caltech Christian Fellowship, CCF. from 2013 to 2017, serving as a large group coordinator and leading discussions on core Christian doctrines like the Apostles' Creed and forgiveness, and trying to assassinate the president. No, that's it.
Yeah, it's right next to the Apostles' Creed,
Yeah,
actually.
exactly. Yeah. Former associates, including classmates and a fellowship member, described him as a strong believer in evangelical Christianity. Not one for evangelicals.
Nope.
And someone who was pretty prominent in the campus Christian community. So there you go.
How funny
Yeah.
would it be to, like, you're going through college and you're joining the local campus group, and this guy is your small group leader, and you're like, Cole, what a wholesome young man, little fruity, but then 4 years later you turn on the news and you're like, what the heck?
Like, what if you wrote Cole a letter of recommendation at any point in his life, and you're like, that doesn't look good.
Yeah, this is now awkward. All right, well, that's enough on Mr. Cole. Where to next, sir?
What do you have next in line? I've got a couple things, but I don't know.
Oh wait, no, we were going to do Gavin Ortland, icon veneration with SDY.
Yes. Yeah, let's do that.
I don't know why that changed to my eForms tab. Give me a second.
And there was also the link that Christian sent. I think we were going to do that maybe before.
We want to do SSPX?
Yeah, that kind of ties into the whole Canterbury Bishop thing. Kind of
yeah, let's do that one first.
Exposes a little bit of hypocrisy, I would say.
Meandering back and forth. So we have. Do you want to start with the article, or do you want to start with the homily?
I don't know.
Christian, you drive this one.
Okay. Well, okay, so this is from LifeSite. Now, this is a pretty major development as far as I'm aware. The only traditional Latin Mass that I've ever been to, which was like 7 years ago now at this point, was an SSPX church in Washington. Beautiful cathedral, very, very nice. And the friend who invited me was, of course, instead of a contest, right? So he was like, oh, we don't like the Pope. Very right-wing group that I was with at the time. They were like, oh, we don't like the Pope, so this is the church that all of us bros go to, okay? Now, Bishop Fillet recently said in an SSPX confirmation that he is pretty sure that there is enormous probability that all of you, we included, may be excommunicated and declared in schism. And this is from yesterday. Pope Leo XIV is planning on excommunicating the bishops of the Society of St. Pius X, SSPX, and possibly its priests and lay supporters upon the society's consecration of new bishops this July, according to sources in Rome. Rorate Chieli shared in an exclusive report on Saturday that Pope Leo has decided to follow the precedent of Pope John Paul II in declaring it as excommunicated the SSPX bishops who participate in the society's upcoming episcopal consecrations on July 1st, according to Roman sources. Leo is said to have already had a decree prepared similar in tone and content to the one that Pope John Paul II had promulgated through Cardinal Bernardin Gantin, prefect of the Congregation for Bishops on July 1st, 1988. Like John Paul II, Leo would declare the SSPX bishops, both those consecrating and those newly consecrated, excommunicated ipso facto, meaning they would be automatically excommunicated by virtue of the fact that they are participating in episcopal consecrations without papal approval. In other words, those SSPX bishops would be considered to have committed a schismatic act, and Leo's decree would urge priests and faithful not to give their assent to it. SSPX Bishop Bernard Fillet
real quick, what is being done? What are these consecrations? Is he consecrating new?
It's essentially mirroring what Archbishop Lefebvre did back in the 70s, I think, when he consecrated more SSPX bishops against the Vatican. So it's simply the same thing is happening. All these older bishops that were consecrated back then are dying out, so the SSPX needs more bishops to carry on.
And were these bishops who were formerly excommunicated under Pope John Paul II?
I believe they were, yeah.
And then reunited?
Partially. I think partially, yeah.
Through the Pope, Pope giving in, or did they repent, or how did that happen?
That's interesting. I'd have to look up.
The history here is interesting.
From what I remember hearing, it's something like there's partial communion, which I don't really know what that means in Catholicism. So that they're in partial communion with the Pope, but they're not formally recognized, right?
So I think it comes down to the line that they observe the papal see as legitimate, but they don't consent to Vatican II. So I think that's the partial communion.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What beyond that, or I mean, so what are some of the practical implications? Like, do they only do the Latin Mass, or like what is their
They
only
do
Latin
the
Mass? Okay.
Yeah, they're traditionalists.
Any other elements that are kind of would stand out to a common observer that differentiate them from your everyday run of the mill Catholic?
No, I don't. It's mostly they just adhere to the Latin Mass and reject Vatican II.
Okay.
That's pretty much the precedent.
But not all Latin masses are run by SSPX guys.
No, there's still Latin masses that are allowed within the current church. It's just very, very slim to none. Like it's becoming slowly extinct.
Right, because Francis didn't like that. He was basically trying to get rid of it.
Not
as I
like the Latin
understand it.
Mass,
But
no.
I think Leo is more favorable to the Latin Mass, as I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is talking about the hypocrisy of it all is really the worst part.
Dude, maybe when they get
It's-
excommunicated, they'll actually have more. They'll be accepted more because all these other excommunicated people are being brought in, no problem. So
That's right.
yeah,
Well, but that's the interesting part of it is I get that the ecclesially they kind of have to be excommunicated from the official organization of the Catholic Church because they are they're like circumventing the Pope,
Mhm.
right? Which they can't do within their own system versus like, the Anglicans or the Muslims or evangelicals or the Lutherans where they're already outside the system, right? So they don't have the Pope doesn't excommunicate every Lutheran priest or every Anglican priest because they're not under his
they're not
jurisdiction.
bound by the same system to abide
No.
by these doctrines.
So I suppose I'm curious here, when they're excommunicated by the Catholic Church, do they believe that is a valid excommunication?
That's a tricky
Because
one.
if they submit to the Roman See and the Roman See excommunicates them, even if they still don't accept Vatican II, like is the proper position to be excommunicated or just to step down from the role of clergy?
I guess from the SSPX perspective, yeah, it would be a proper excommunication, as opposed to like the Sedevacantists perspective, that they don't believe the Pope is valid at all. So, but the reaction would be interesting to see what the SSPX does. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen yet.
Well, so do they just become Sedevacantists at that point? Because
I suppose I'm not sure.
excommunication is quite serious among
Yeah.
the Catholic faith. It's not something to be taken lightly,
Yeah.
and not just for the priests and the new priests that are, coming up, which would be a terrifying example. Like if I was a young man heading into the clergy and I'm going to be, ordained at the SSPX in July, and I know that upon my doing this, I'm going to be excommunicated by the church that I'm trying to join and trying to be, joining the priesthood of. It's a rather serious thing to go through with.
Yeah, and I have actually a lot of friends that I know of that are SSPX, and they do observe the Pope as being legitimate. So it's pretty concerning if you're going to be excommunicated. Absolutely.
Would parishioners be excommunicated
Yes.
as well? Or?
Said layman would be excommunicated as well.
That was the threat, which is again, it's a very heavy threat, just being a
really
laity
is.
among these churches.
Yeah,
I mean, this almost sounds medieval. It's like,
Well,
excommunicate a
it's
whole
very
town.
similar to like kind of what happened in the Protestant Reformation.
Because they can't, I guess, I was going to say they can't get baptized, but I guess they still, I guess the baptisms would still be valid. But I know like that was a big thing in the medieval church. If you excommunicated a town, then they weren't able to perform baptisms. And so people, and because of sort of the view of baptism as being the thing that removes original sin, people felt like unbaptized infants would go straight to hell, and so it created a whole lot of angst in the city if they couldn't get their babies baptized, and so it was a huge point of leverage that the Pope had over everyday cities if they were acting in rebellion against the Pope in any way, or not even religiously but just politically. So I'm curious. I'm just curious how some of those practical implications play out.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I mean, July's coming up when they're going to consecrate these new bishops. So.
I mean, yeah, you have 1 month
Yeah.
to July 1st, basically, right?
Yeah.
Now, I wonder if it's like a threat tactic
Yeah.
to say, listen, if you well, I know it's almost Trumpian rhetoric, right? Hey, if you do this, we are going to excommunicate not only the current priest, not only the new priest, but also all of the laity, right? We're going to strike your names from the record.
Society of St. Pius
A
X.
whole diocese will end tonight.
Yeah, well, basically, right? He's like,
Yeah.
the SSPX movement is dead tonight.
To answer
Tomorrow
your question,
we bomb their parishes.
to answer your question, Boo, it's the Society of Saint Pius X, which is a traditional sect of Catholicism, which is in
They do
communion
not
with
rec-
Rome, but rejects Vatican II.
Oop, wrong button. So here is his warning just a couple days ago. This is the current Bishop Bernard Fallet, who is currently a Catholic bishop, maybe not for much longer.
I prefer not to be prophet here, but I'm pretty sure that there is an enormous probability that all of you, we included, of course, may be excommunicated, declared schism. There is a very high probability because they already said it in public, so they are, so to say, forcing themselves to do it. But whatever, God can do miracles. It's not the end. It's not the end. But our history shows that God wants us to be a sign of contradiction. A sign of contradiction which reveals a lot of hearts. And sign of contradiction means the cross. I prefer not to be prophet.
That's rough.
Yeah, it's a rough spot to be in.
Well,
Gives you some appreciation for Luther.
I'm curious though, because doesn't this, to the SSPX guys, doesn't this invalidate the papacy? Right? Because if they say we don't recognize Vatican II as an ecumenical council, even though it's been blessed by the 3 popes post Vatican II, right? 4 popes? Several popes post Vatican II. So you're saying the Roman See has defected.
Well, but it hasn't been blessed infallibly. Is that how they get around that? You know, if you're taking a strict papal minimalist perspective, it's like, yes, they've blessed it, but they could have blessed it incorrectly. So,
all
I
right.
don't know. It's not my team. I don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but if he's going to excommunicate groups for not accepting it, doesn't that imply that it is, in fact, you cannot reject Vatican II and be a Catholic? So
Well,
isn't this
even
another
excommunications-
BTFOing of... Sorry?
Papal minimalists don't see excommunications as infallible. Right.
Do they see sainthood as infallible?
I don't think so. I think like a real papal
Isn't that the
minimalist-
magisterium's decision, though?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a little,
Huh.
but I
It's a
think there are
complicated
differing
system.
opinions on that particular topic, on whether or not excommunications or even
Because excommunications can be rescinded, right?
well, yes, but that's actually built into this to the mechanism. But the question is, because Catholics believe that you can be out of a state of grace, then
Well, yeah, you
one
can, of course, come
could-
back in.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, there's always the option to come back in, but that's not the same thing as
As saying you were excommunicated
you were
incorrectly.
never exactly right. The excommunication wasn't valid from the get-go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because even that's another thing with sainthood in the Catholic Church. Like, of late, over the last, 50 years or so, they've beatified people that were heretics during their time, right? Like, wasn't Palmos eventually got his sainthood, even though he was a heretic and condemned by ecumenical councils during his time? Am I correct about that?
I'm not
Is that the-
familiar with that, no.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Because he was a
When was
Eastern-
Palmos around?
a while ago, right?
Okay.
Gregory of Palamas. Yeah, 14th century.
Okay.
13th, 14th century.
What was he in heresy for?
I'd have to look
I'm
it
sorry,
up. But I know that he was a Eastern Catholic,
Okay.
right? So he was a saint in the Eastern Catholic Church that ended up being condemned at let me see. Heresy. I have to look this up. It'll take me a second. So what put him is so he believes in schism. But again, in the 14th century he was declared a heretic by the Western Church. Eastern Church remained him, right? And then he ended up, like, not very long ago, like 50, 60, 70 years ago. Well, actually, he's also a saint to the Western Church, even though we condemned him as a heretic 600 years ago. Right.
Interesting.
So one would think that neither of those are infallible, right? Because one invalidates the
They,
other.
they would have to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's a complicated system, man. It makes your head hurt.
Yeah. Well, speaking of head hurting here, we have Father Stephen DeYoung, who's a very, very smart Orthodox father, very, very well learned, versus perhaps, at least on YouTube, one of the more learned and scholarly Gavin Ortland. And I did. Have you guys seen the drama between Jay Dyer and Gavin Ortland over the last few days?
No.
Okay, so
Curious
how do
now.
I explain this? So Jay Dyer, he's causing trouble all the time, calling people
I'm
out,
sure.
using naughty words. Gavin
Yes, he does.
Ortland basically subtweeted him and saying, like, I don't interact with people who use mean words or say things like this. But I think he's talked to people like Destiny and other, like, noted, cucks and degenerates who have, like, threatened to kill people and stuff like that. So
Right,
it's a little
but
like
Destiny's not a Christian, right? It's the old, I mean, this is straight from the Bible where it's like Paul says, I'm not talking about the world. Like you can engage with evildoers in the world. I'm talking about the Christians who act poorly. Don't engage with those people. That is a biblical principle.
Sure, right. Gavin and his father, however, are on the board of a church that is gay and trans affirming, and Gavin's father is a gay and trans affirming pastor.
Yeah, I've heard
And
that he's
so
not good. Yeah.
He quoted him as that and is like, "Oh, you won't associate with me because I use bad words, but like here is your literal dad," which I get it. It's a tough burn to have, and also that again he's on the board with his father,
Right.
so he's in direct communion with some of these guys. It's like, but I'm too mean to talk to.
Are we talking about Gavin Ortland's dad supporting gay stuff? Is that what we're?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That is awkward.
A little bit.
Well, beside the point, the reason I picked this clip, I like Stephen DeYoung. I've only sort of recently started listening to him, but I really enjoy him. He's a former Protestant, and he is very gracious in his dialogue, which is really helpful. But it's like what I was saying last week when I was criticizing. Was it Scholastic Answers or Cleave to Antiquity or one of these guys who like
It was Christian
Scholastic Answers, yeah, in this case. But you'll see it with a lot of these guys who used to be Protestants like yesterday, and now they're like, you idiot Protestants, and you don't get that from Stephen DeYoung, which I really appreciate. I think that it is nice to see someone who is coming at it intentionally charitably, and I get it. Sometimes you up the rhetoric, sometimes you go blow for blow, but most of the time that's not the best way to go about it, and especially if that's not what the other person is, if that's not the energy that you're getting from the other person. So I'm sure Gavin and DeYoung will get along just fine.
Yeah, I'd be curious to ask about kind of, for me, when I study the issue of icon veneration, I read through the anathemas given it, and I see it too, and they're making certain historical claims. So they're claiming, I mentioned before, they're talking about a practice, kissing, lighting candles, deep kneeling and bowing. The theology surrounding this practice is very specifically laid out as figural representation. What is given to the image passes through to the prototype. So there's a very specific theology and then a claim of history surrounding that theology. And when I study the early church, I would say, you mentioned like a gross violation of the Torah. I mean, I wouldn't be necessary to go that far with that language. All that would be
So, John,
necessary for my concern.
The whole
would be,
video is good, and it's only about 10 minutes long. But the part I wanted to call out was, I think, 5:30. If you want to go to that timestamp, just to.
My bad. If it,
keep
oh yeah,
it moving,
5:35.
you're
My
good.
bad. I didn't have the timestamp pulled up.
You're good.
Act of love we show them, right? So it's not that loving our neighbor is opposed to loving God, right? That those are the same thing, because the love we show to anyone is really showing love to God. And so I see that theology, and I see it too, as being a reapplication of that to, if I pick up a photo of my wife and I kiss it, right? I'm obviously not cheating on her with a piece of paper, right? I am loving her, expressing my love for her, right? Through that means.
So pause it.
I think
that's the part that I was interested to see your reactions to. So he's just defending icon veneration, and one of the examples he's talking about is, if you kissed a picture of your wife, obviously you're not substituting that picture for your wife. You're not, so that that's an appropriate type of veneration, an appropriate activity. That does not in any way diminish your love for the person itself, which I think is all fair and good. My only comment on this, is that there are, as a married man, there are inappropriate things you can do with a picture of your wife, and I think that's the Protestant critique of icon veneration. There are some. Just in general, there are inappropriate things you can do with pictures, but you can engage with icons inappropriately. You can give them more. I want to say reverence. I mean, I suppose that applied to icons specifically, then you certainly could give them the icons more reverence than is due. You can detach the icons from the person, right? Like that is the problem with, if you were to, as some men will do, masturbate to a picture of your wife or something like that. That's wrong.
I've never masturbated to a picture of your wife.
That's good, John.
That's where that was going.
It's one of many inappropriate things you do. But that is disordered at the very least, because it separates the act from the person, right? And so that is an example of you can adore an icon in an appropriate way, but you can also do so in an appropriate way. And the thrust of the Protestant critique is that not that pictures are bad, but that pictures can be used incorrectly. And if you don't provide the disclaimer along with the icon, you're acting irresponsibly. Now, there is more to the Protestant critique, but that is my biggest critique, is that I think people are often too quick to say, yeah, venerate. You basically can't venerate enough. And I'm saying, no, you need to have a disclaimer. There is a wrong way to venerate, and there is a risk. We are idol-making creatures, and we will make idols out of anything if given the opportunity and not cautioned against it. And there are absolutely ways to make idols out of icons. And if you're not aware of that possibility, then you are likely to fall into that sin. So that is what occurred to me when I heard this. Although otherwise, I think it's a fair analogy, and I think that the point's well taken. But I just wanted to make that point and hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah. So for me, if you accept the Orthodox presupposition that the Church Triumphant, or whatever name they have for it, is with us, right? There's a thin veil between us here on earth and them in heaven, right? If that is part of your theology, then it's just a simple continuation of that. So we have the icon of, like, say, Paul or something like that. And it says to greet the brothers with a holy kiss. And if you believe, again, this is your presupposition, that icon, the veneration to that, passes on to the prototype, then it is actually very appropriate to venerate that, right? As you would Paul if he were here with us, right? As I would show respect and honor to any of the apostles or any of the great saints who came before, right?
I'm not sure I would go that far, because if your wife was standing in front of you and then you kissed a picture of your wife instead of just kissing your wife, that would be odd, right? And so I don't think that
we understand that here on earth there is a veil between us and the people beyond, right? And so again, that icon, whatever it may be, is simply a window to that. So the veneration to that passes to the prototype. It's the same thing, like you kind of say, like, if I kissed a picture of my wife, that's not necessarily weird. It's the same thing like when I'm talking to my wife on the phone and I'm hearing her voice, or if it's a video call and I say I love you, I realize that those pixels on the screen aren't my wife, right? My wife
that is your wife that
somewhere
you're
else.
seeing, that you're telling that you love to. Yeah.
Yes,
so
of course.
so
Interesting.
maybe that's a fair point. Which actually makes me revise my position. I think this is actually a bad analogy. I think that if that is what he is saying, if that's the point, and based on kind of the rest of this interview, I think you might be onto something, John. Then I think that this idea of kissing, a picture of your wife is actually probably not a very good analogy to communicate the actual type of adoration that's going on here. But I don't really know what I'm talking about.
Icons and intercessory prayers, it's all wrapped up together, right? You can't separate it, right? Because the same way you would ask a saint to pray for you, you're not praying to them, but you believe that they can hear your prayers and intercede on your behalf, right? In the same way, like if you see an icon or something as you enter and leave the church in the liturgical service, like it's really only a couple times in the service that you ever venerate an icon. It's twice, right? Outside of some special services, you walk in, you bow. Some people kiss, some people do other things, whatever they feel.
Well, but a lot of people have icons throughout their house. I mean, they venerate them.
Well, yeah, you can have an icon section, an icon wall, and stuff like that. And that's it's. I even like that. Like, why wouldn't you have a part of your house dedicated to the church, to prayer, to?
It's almost like a mini church in your house, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I don't have any problem with that. I mean, it's the same thing that you can make the argument just for Christian art and iconography in general, right? Outside of an icon,
right? But it's a different argument, right? You can't conflate the two, right?
No, they are different, right? So I wouldn't like venerate. Just
I have no issue with Christian art in your house, but the way you. Yeah, but it is a category difference if you have a shrine to saints in your house versus some Christian art.
Well, but again, it's not a shrine necessarily, especially in the Orthodox.
I mean, I think they call them shrines.
There's
I didn't mean that as pejorative. I think that is an official
like,
term that you can use.
That might be a word that they use, but in my head, when I say shrine, I'm thinking of like a mini temple dedicated to like just them, which obviously is like not the correct like mental state for that.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot, I lost my train of thought there.
I guess it's just like an icon corner or prayer corner.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the way that I've always heard them described as.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Most of my knowledge of Orthodoxy pre-starting this show comes from reading Russian literature, so I think they might call them shrines.
I know where I was going. So in Eastern Orthodoxy, it's much different than Catholicism. So in Nicaea II, specifically, you can only have 2D icons.
Yes.
It's only paintings. Catholics have 3D icons, right? Which does lead, I think, to your point, James, to a lot more things that can be not just veneration but improper worship of an object, right? And you see this in certain artworks like the Knights Templar with Mary's breasts and just weird things going on with certain things that do lead to very strange, inappropriate things that you should not be doing, whereas Eastern Orthodox icons are literally just that. They're 2D pictures and they have to be done like a certain way to be appropriate.
Yeah, that's a fair point, and especially with the Renaissance, the Western view and idea of art radically changed from the Nicene II Council view of art and iconography. So there was a vast split even between that.
Which is why like Eastern Orthodox icons like look so distinct in their styling.
Right.
They have to be that way.
Yes.
That seems more of a prudential difference than a principle difference. But maybe I'm...
Well, if I made a statue of the Theotokos and it was rather curvy, do you think that would be inappropriate?
Right.
There's only there's proper ways to even make icons that could be venerated.
Again,
and there definitely
I
is
your
Western
point, but it still seems more
iconography that
prudential
has sexual
than...
innuendos for sure.
Yes. Well, for a long time, the only way you were allowed to artistically portray nudes was if they were in Bible stories. So you had Adam and Eve, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I just keep doing Eve over and over and over again.
Exactly.
Big fan of Eve.
Yeah.
The thought of that makes me uncomfortable.
So I don't know.
So icon veneration is very anti-Western, especially if you come out of like a post-Enlightenment ideology, especially like anti-American, right? The idea of, it almost goes against like rugged individualism in a way, because you're honoring those who came before and showing like deference to them. You're bowing to them. Like we don't bow to no one. We don't got no king. Yeah, thick-looking icons are inappropriate. Shadow Force. Those are not icons. Those are anime stickers. It's very different. Okay, you cannot venerate those.
Wild Convo, yeah, you're one to talk, Logan. Come on.
Wild Convo, yeah. All right, bro.
Yeah.
I see what you post on Discord.
Yeah.
All right, we can move on.
No, I had a
thought it was
question for you,
interesting
James.
conversation. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So what is like your perspective of like Nicaea too, like the church coming together, all these bishops from around the world and Christianity coming together and saying, hey, this form of icon veneration is okay. I know Protestants don't accept all the ecumenical councils from the first millennia, but what's like your view of that? I'm just curious.
When was Nicaea 2?
Nicaea 2 is the 7th council, or is it the 8th council?
It's the 7th.
I think it's the 8th.
785, maybe.
Because I think Protestants count the
are
first 7, and then they ignore. A lot of Protestants will ignore the 8th. I mean, we cut off
So
with
787 is the second council of Nicaea. I haven't read the canons, so I should read them before I opine on them. But I follow in the I mean, apart from what I've said about sort of my concerns about making idols out of icons, that is primary concern. I think it does sound like there are some perhaps maybe even metaphysical differences, but certainly theological differences in terms of well, I think it really does breach metaphysics in terms of how the icons sort of communicate the presence of the saints. Because even in this video, which I would recommend, hopefully we can put the link in the chat. But in this video, Stephen DeYoung makes a point about how the Eastern view of the Trinity informs their view of iconography in terms of sort of how I guess the essence of God is communicated through the other persons is similar to the way that the icons communicate the essence of the saints, or something along those lines. I can't put it precisely, but there is a Trinitarian not equivalency, but similitude being made here.
Well, I think it also has to do with their view of the resurrection as well, right? Because it kind of recapitulates humanity and all flesh and nature to God. So that's why you have the ability to even have icons in the first place.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So sorry, I can't give you more in-depth answer, but yeah, I mean, I have concerns, and I do think that I think that Protestants can often be a little bit overly zealous in their disdain for some of these practices.
For me, as a Protestant, icon veneration is really the only question I have when it comes to Orthodoxy or Protestantism.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's just icon veneration.
Interesting.
Like really.
Yeah.
So I wonder, what do you think about this? Okay. People have Protestants have a very, very, very high view of Scripture. They'll kiss Scripture. They will put it in special places in their house. They will never set something on top of the Bible, right? They'll never hold the Bible upside down. But what are words if not icons?
Yeah, that's
well, this goes back to what you were saying, John, about sort of what is happening with the icons is not simply an imaging of the saint. It is actually sort of a communicating of the saint's presence or something along those lines. So something different is happening metaphysically that I don't think you could apply to the Protestant view of even something that we respect so greatly or hold so highly as Scripture. So like a Protestant cross, like Protestants will, in a sense, venerate the cross, but it is a different kind of veneration, I think, even than what the Orthodox are practicing. But obviously we hold the cross in like the highest of regard, but we see it as being representative, not representative, I guess, if that's
Well,
a
even
fair way to
you
put
would,
it.
when you look at the cross and you honor or you pray, do you not think that that passes on to the prototype?
Yes, but the cross is in my view purely there to help communicate to my flesh. It is simply an aid. It is not
Interesting.
required. Right? I could pray just as effectively without the cross, in theory. Although perhaps it is helpful to have a cross, or to have something to physically remind me and to sort of focus my fleshly energies. if
Right.
that
So
makes sense.
prudentially, wouldn't it be good to have a cross? So prudentially,
no,
wouldn't it
prudentially
be
it would
good
be,
if we
yeah.
wished to venerate, saints?
I don't have a problem with
right?
cross. Like I think it's cool to have a cross necklace. Like I don't have problems with representations like that. I don't even have a problem with representing, like there's sort of an iconoclastic strain within Protestantism, especially early Protestantism, but certainly some even modern strains that still feel that displaying images of the face of Christ, like representing Christ as your average white male with blue eyes, or however you want to demonstrate him, is a violation of the second commandment, right? Make no graven images. I do not hold that position because I feel that.
Well, right, but they're not. When they worship a graven image, they're worshiping like the wood.
Right. But let me make my
being of
point.
the
I mean,
thing,
I
right?
think that
I don't actually
think-
worship like the paint on a piece of
Right.
paper. Like
Icons would not have been allowed in the Old Testament. I mean, I think we're all
That's you
because
see.
the problem
John.
with that is that before Christ,
exactly. This is
are-
my point. This is why I'm okay with these symbols.
Well, no. What I'm saying
is
is before
because of
Christ,
the
there would be
incarnation. The
icons.
incarnation. What's that?
Before Christ, there would be what Orthodox would consider iconography within the Jewish temple before Christ. So they believe that they have a lineage of this being used in the liturgy before Christ that they are merely continuing on. Now that's debated again. I have not. I know they have a whole document.
I don't know exactly how you square that with the traditional Jewish view of the second commandment. But
you're listening to a traditional Jewish view post Christ versus necessarily what they would have believed actually pre-Christ.
I'm not even filtering it through the modern day Jews. I'm just talking about a Old Testament view of the second commandment. Which you're right. We won't have a perfect.
Well, but it's like my modern understanding of the Old Testament isn't necessarily I would love to see the first temple, right? Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Because it would just answer all my questions immediately,
right? Right. Yeah. The Protestant perspective, and as I understand it, largely the Catholic perspective, although I could be perhaps slightly off on this, but and perhaps not the Eastern perspective. I'm not as versed in that, but certainly the Protestant perspective that is not iconoclastic would see the incarnation as being a sea change in terms of exactly how that second commandment is applied, because before, there was a command not to make images of God because we're idol creating beings, and we will
there are
look
still
to,
no images of God.
Yeah.
Right.
No images
well,
of God.
there are now because God became man.
Well, so there are images of Christ.
So images of
There are
Christ,
still-
well, that is God, right? Don't want to be an historian. Images of Christ are images of God. Right?
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And so post-incarnation,
But specifically, the
our
person
application
the
of
Father,
that
there is
commandment
no-
has changed a little bit. So that's why I think it is okay to represent images of Christ and not be violating that commandment. That's why I'm not iconoclastic in that traditional Protestant train of thought.
Well, right. And so somebody else pointed out, Stag, Fabulous, like there were images and statues within the temple, which would be part of their, needed to be there for the worship, right?
Yeah.
But not of God, right? There'd be images of angels. There'd be you can call those icons, but there wouldn't be of God that you only have post-incarnation in East and West, as I understand it.
Right.
But
Well, so
I
what I'm
see
trying to
your
say
point
is
about
the Eastern Orthodox
non-God
not
icons,
without
non-Christ,
God the
non-Christological
Father, right?
icons.
Of course, yes,
Yeah.
Christ is God, but they do not have images of God the Father.
Right.
Specifically, the person of God the Father.
Yeah.
All right.
That makes sense.
Well, that was a good talk on icons. I love this talk. Let's see. What else are we looking at here? We want to go to John Lennox. Why does God allow suffering? Or you can talk. I really don't want to do the Andrew Wilson thing because I know we're just gonna do the same thing that we
Just
always
spiral
do when
out.
talking
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
Agrippa's trilemma, and I hate Not So Erudite, so I don't really want to listen to her at all.
Yeah, we don't have to do that one.
I mean,
You
unless
did put it in the
want-
thumbnail.
There's a couple Alex O'Connor clips, 3 Alex
Yeah.
O'Connor clips actually. So which one do you want to start with?
So the Alex O'Connor clips we have to do because that leads into a topic that I kind of want us to cover at some point in the future. So I kind of want to tee it up. The Not So Erudite video is there's only 1 minute. Okay, I mean,
Fine. No, we'll do it now. No, we're
let's
doing
do
it
it.
now.
Let's do it. Let's do it quick. We can be
Do it
quick.
live.
Foundation of any worldview normative.
Sorry, I need to.
So
reload
what
this
is
page.
Not So Erudite like a lesbian or something? Like what is her actual?
I watched her
So-
debate Jay Dyer the other night. Oh my gosh.
She claims to be Christian, but she does not hold to any specific worldview. So I think she uses Christianity as kind of a way to get around Andrew's worldview. I don't believe that she's not. I mean, again, this is just my intuition is that she may not be completely firm in her beliefs one way or the other when it comes to her Christian faith.
Right.
But anyways, this is a terrible screenshot. I apologize. But this is Not So Erudite, Andrew Wilson, Agrippa's trilemma.
Unless she says it differently, it's erudite. That's the word.
Well, I think people call her erudite.
Erudite. Okay.
Not so erudite.
Or not so bright.
Not
Not so bright. Whoa.
I would say every single foundation of any worldview, normative, or meta-ethics is unjustifiable. Yes, this is what axioms are.
Oh, really?
They all fail Agrippa's trilemma. Yes.
Oh,
How do
because
you
of
not
Agrippa's
fail it?
trilemma.
How do you not fail Agrippa's trilemma?
Oh man, that's really weird. Tell me again, what does Agrippa's trilemma say?
All justification systems fail at a foundational level because they will fail in one of 3 ways, or all of 3 ways: dogmatism,
Yeah.
infinite regression, and circular reasoning.
Is that position justified?
No.
Okay. So anyway, back to this.
Wait, so you run away from Agrippa's trilemma? Okay, you know what?
I ran
Sure.
I ran away from it.
Yeah.
You just said that Agrippa's trilemma is not a justified position.
What do you mean by justified?
Well,
Which is the
whatever you
correct
mean by it in Agrippa's trilemma.
Well, it's an internal critique of justification systems. Agrippa's
Uh-huh.
what do you mean is Agrippa's trilemma unjustified? It is a philosophical tool that we can utilize to understand that at a foundational level, no belief systems. How do you solve Agrippa's trilemma?
Well, it's self-refuting. This has been known for 1,000 years. I don't know if you know this or not. Agrippa's trilemma is self-refuting. If all things are axiomatic,
You
right?
assume.
The reduction to axiomatic, are we making a truth claim?
You are making a truth claim. Yep.
Okay. And is that truth claim justified?
No.
No,
Yeah, because you assume. Wait, are you not making a truth claim?
it doesn't matter.
Of course it does. Are you not making truth
Well,
claims?
wait a second. Did you posit an argument to me, which was Agrippa's trilemma?
Yep.
And was that argument justified? No.
No more than any. Wait, is your arguments justified?
What does that have to do with you?
I'm internally critiquing you this
You
time.
can internally critique me with your argument?
Yes, I would say every single foundation
This is
of
a funny
any
place to cut off.
worldview.
All right. So the issue, she asked the correct question. What do you mean by justified? Because this is the thing. If you're saying justified deductively, then no, you cannot justify Agrippa's trilemma. But that is not the only means of justification, or that, because even in Wilson's view, he will run into Agrippa's trilemma, and he does run from it. He doesn't justify it himself. The question is, are there non-deductive means of justification? This is always the question when you run into this sort of line of argumentation. The question is, are there non-deductive means of justification? And my answer is yes, there are inductive means of justification. The problem with induction or abstraction or whatever you want to call it is it is going to be subjective. It is now going to involve the subject who is going to be doing the abstracting, which will create levels of uncertainty. But the type of justification that they are talking about is purely deductive, and Agrippa's triangle cannot be deductively justified because that's the definition of an axiom. But Andrew Wilson's argument proves too much, as they say. If Wilson is correct, then all axioms are bunk. You cannot have any axiom, including any axiom that he would say. Any axiom that Andrew Wilson would say would be unjustified as he's saying it, and therefore he would be defeating both himself and Not So Erudite.
Well,
I know we've gone in
suppose-
circles around this before, but I don't know. I saw this clip again and it bothered me, so I wanted to try one more time.
It's really a matter of context here, right? So Agrippa's trilemma can work kind of as a way of a internal critique of somebody else's system, right? But if you try and just pose Agrippa's trilemma on its own, somebody else can just eternally critique you, right? And that's where you get this vicious circle, right? Where it's like, if I just posit Agrippa's trilemma, which meaning that no worldview can be justified from a foundational level, right? And I say, well, is that belief like justified from a foundational level? And you just say no, right? Versus if I say, well, I do have
right, but you can say that without delegitimizing.
Well, it's not
your
a
perspective.
contradiction in then, but I'm just.
It's
gonna
not a
say,
contradiction.
okay,
It's also
your
not.
belief
It doesn't
is
delegitimize because it would only delegitimize if the only way to justify something was at a foundational level, but that's not the only way to justify something. We don't have to argue it. I'm just saying this is, for anyone who is on my side in this debate, this is the correct response. Don't get tripped up when you get to this point. Just recognize that this type of justification that Agrippa's trilemma is talking about, that is not the only type of justification available to you. That is the correct way to move beyond this I don't know, I think unfair tactic that Wilson's using. But
well, I don't
so
even,
many people
I don't
get
even
stumped by this.
I don't even grant though that it's necessarily a problem, right? Because one of Agrippa's trilemmas is infinite regress, right? But I don't even grant that infinite regress is a problem, right? I don't have to go through every step of infinity to, know that I'm on the right track or to know that there is an infinity waiting for me at the end of it, right? I don't need to count to infinity to understand that it exists, basically, right? I'm not going to sit here and count to infinity to prove to you that it's real.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't even necessarily agree with the Agrippa's trilemma in the first place. And there's other ways around it. You can have the coherentist, whatever it's called, worldview, and that's how you can argue that you justify your worldview. So, I mean, again, anytime somebody says, well, you don't have a justified worldview, and it's like, well, okay, then nobody's worldview is justified, then it's all just force. So congratulations, I'm bigger and stronger than you are. It's
right,
like, all right,
exactly.
Thank you. Wonderful.
This comment is why I think it's helpful to talk about these videos, because this is, I think, where most people are left after this kind of tactic from Wilson, and you'll see it with Jay Dyer all the time. When this tactic is deployed, I think maybe you can fix it. I think that's where people just feel completely gaslit. They feel like, what are you even saying? Like, you've just defeated logic itself. And I'm not even saying that's necessarily what's happened, but that is you're left in this sort of dazed state of, how are we even talking? Are we even using the same language right now? And so I'm just trying to provide what is the next step to keep the conversation going and to help move forward. And you're right, there are other ways, there are other responses to it as well, but I think it stumps a lot of people.
Well, speaking of Agrippa's trilemma and suffering, let's let John Lennox explain to us why God allows suffering for Alex O'Connor, the world's smuggest atheist, but I still like him.
He's not that smug. He's actually, I mean, he used to be.
The way he talks, and he's so posh, and he's
well, he is posh.
When
He is British.
Yes, well, you see, don't you understand?
So welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Alex.
How are you?
I'm good, better than I deserve, actually. But I've lost a bit of weight since I last saw you. So I'm actually feeling in good form.
That's good. I was really glad to sit down with you last time and have a conversation which we were just talking about. Attracted a lot of attention. It's got more than 1 million views on the main video. And interestingly, it's a moment near the end that seems to have captured people's attention where silly of me, I sort of bring up the problem of evil when we've sort of got about maybe 5 minutes left in the tank, and you say, oh, well, that's maybe a conversation for another time, but I'll give you one thing. And people really sort of took to that. That seems to be the main thing that people enjoyed about the podcast.
That's interesting.
Interesting. I find that sometimes when you are sort of making an offhand comment with not very much time and you're forced to make something very succinctly, it can be some of the most effective rhetoric. And this also happened to you with your first debate with Richard Dawkins, didn't it?
It did indeed. Towards the end, we got a message that neither of us expected, that we'd only got 2 minutes left. And in fact, we'd been told in advance that we had 9 minutes to make a concluding speech. And of course, I'd spent hours in doing this. And 2 minutes, wrap it up, finish, you see. So I decided to go for the heart of Christianity, which was the resurrection. And again, that bit went viral. You're quite right. People paid attention to it because Dawkins reacted very strongly against it and said, how petty. Oh, we've been talking all about great philosophical ideas and so on. And now we come to the resurrection of Jesus. I almost remember his exact words. It's so unworthy of the universe.
Yes.
And I remember thinking on that. If the resurrection actually happened, it's one of the biggest things because death is the ultimate mystery and it comes to us all. But you're right, it did. It caught them at the end. And in fact, this has happened several other times
All right,
where
so pause it.
a question has come.
So we're only going to go to 6:04, I think is what I had. Yeah. So this next part is the key here, where he's describing a story, which I think that's a pretty powerful idea.
Almost out of left field. And I've had to think very rapidly. What do I say? Go for the one central argument that I would want to say anyway. And that's what people focus on.
Yeah, and that moment with Dawkins is representative of what happens sometimes where somebody will like make a criticism of a worldview, like say they criticize Christianity, and the Christian, rather than saying, no, that's not true, they sort of just go, yeah, but it's not a criticism. So in the same way that, like, you know, a Muslim might say, oh, you have a God, but your God died, did he? Oh,
Yes.
he became a human. And you're just like, yeah. And Dawkins says, oh, what? So this sort of grand transcendent God enters into human affairs. And you're
that's
like,
right.
yes, he did. But can you understand why Dawkins would see, and why anybody who's not a Christian essentially would see this ultimate transcendence suddenly becoming interested in, you know, the behaviors of one species at a particular time in history, getting sort of involved in almost like a political affair would seem a little bit sort of strange.
Oh, I can. In fact, you immediately make me think of an incident not far from here where I was invited to address 500 or 600 physicists and experts at a laboratory just south of Oxford at a lunchtime, and on the big questions, God and science and so on. And afterwards, a professor of physics from Oxford here came up to me, very friendly, and he said, you know, I find that most interesting, but I discern that you're a Christian. He was pretty sharp, you see. And he said, that obliges you to believe that God became human. He raised this question. Can you explain that to me? And I looked at him and I said, I tell you what, let's have a quid pro quo. Let me ask you something simpler. Tell me what consciousness is. And there was dead silence for a moment. He said, I don't really know. Well, I said, let me try something easier. What is energy? And he said, well, we can use it, we can measure it. That wasn't my question. I said, what is it? And I said, be careful with your answer because I've read Richard Feynman. And he said, we don't really know. And then I said this, I said, tell me, you don't know what either consciousness or energy are. Do you believe in them? And he said, yes, I do. I said, why? Why do you believe in things you don't know what they are? So that was a bit of a struggle. And I said, I expect part of the reason is because somehow these concepts have enough meaning to give you a sense of they have explanatory power. He said, that's right. Now I said, those were easier questions than the one you asked me. And if you can't explain energy and consciousness, do you think I'm going to be able to explain to you how God can become human? Of course I can't. However, I believe in it because as I consider all the evidence I face, it's the only explanation that makes sense of all the rest. He said, I'll buy that. Let's go on talking. So we had a marvelous conversation from it. And I do understand that very well. I was reflecting on it just the other day. What a huge thing it is actually to believe this.
Yep, that's the initial story there.
So believing without understanding, I think this is a really powerful idea, and really this is why that not so erudite clip actually leads into this well, because this is the type of justification that I'm talking about. This isn't the only kind of inductive justification, but explanatory power, right? We don't have a deductive explanation of exactly how it works. We can't really get down to the fundamentals of it, but we see that it works and we believe that it's true because we experience it to be true and to be predictive and to be explanatory and to make sense of the world we live in. But we do that subjectively. We do that through our experience of this world, and that carries weight to it. That carries a justification in and of itself. And I think so often people, I think probably universally, this is why people actually come to believe in terms of the psychology of belief. It's on the basis of these experiences of belief that doesn't come with complete understanding, and in fact precedes and is never really followed by understanding, at least not in this life, but belief nonetheless. So I thought that was a really powerful message and a good reminder.
Well, I think part of his argument too, Mr. Lennox, is that it's coherent, right? And it's the worldview together that makes sense, right? Because I from the Christian perspective, as I understand, atheists would look at us and be like, well, you guys are weird. From my perspective, I'm like, you guys are the weird ones. You guys are like just random nothingness happening to explode onto this planet in this time. Like, you guys have no purpose in life. Your worldview is weird and depressing. I don't like yours. Mine makes way more sense to me. You know? So I do think that he's right, that the Christian worldview specifically, or at least something, you know, some sort of explanation outside of like, I don't know, some sort of purpose, some telos makes the world make sense. And that is the intuitive thing that people are drawn to, and that's why religion is so effective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think atheism like has roots online a little bit, but not really in the real world. Like the whole joke about there's no atheist in a foxhole, right? As soon as we're met with external forces that we can no longer understand or really even explain to ourselves rationally, we're like, all right, I'm immediately appealing to a higher power now, whatever it might be.
Right. Yeah. Well, the thing is, you need a higher power to have meaning at all. Like the very idea of understanding the order we see around us, if you're going to interpret it as order, requires an orderer. Otherwise, everything is just random. If everything is just random molecules moving around at random,
well, and it's
even
determined,
even
too, right?
still,
So
right? Well, it's determined, yes. But even if it starts to form these things that look like order, if you are purely materialist, you must see even those things as being random. You cannot actually see meaning in a teleological sense in the things that appear in the apparent order. It still must all be ultimately meaningless. Nihilism is the only option left to you.
I mean, it's interesting too, because this is why it's a good argument from like worldviews. So like if you're debating some atheist lefty and he's like, oh, well, this is right and wrong. You know, you can't have this belief. You have to have this belief. It's like, not really. Like, let's engage in your worldview for a minute, right? Why shouldn't I, like, even let's just take evolution, okay? Survival of the fittest, if that is one of our presuppositions, like, why can't I ethnically cleanse large parts of the world that I find to have, you know, undesirable characteristics, right? Like, there are all sorts of things that you can't tell me it's wrong. You can say you don't prefer it, which is lame. I don't care. But you can't tell me it's wrong, right? You have to. What I hate about talking with atheists, not that I hate talking to them or anything like that, but is that they always appeal to a Christian worldview for ethics. Like, you can't do that. You're a Christian. It's like, well, no, I'm not. Not right now. I'm an atheist now, so now I can do whatever I want. I'm going to take your worldview on for a second.
Right. Christian, any thoughts on this before we move on to the next clip?
No, that's a good way to frame it, actually. Yeah, there's obviously going to be things we can't understand or explain, and it all points to God. There's just some things we're not going to be able to explain or rationalize, and that's fine. That's okay. There is a God, and He creates these things. But yeah,
thank God. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, amen.
And guys, I do apologize. The super chats aren't working again this week. We think we have at least one more week before they're going to be back up. But we do have the link to the Ko-fi channel posted in the chat, and we do appreciate your support. Do we have any Ko-fis?
I think we have to go
by
by. Again, I'm not signed into it, so you'd have to go check it out.
Let me see if I can sign in real quick. All right, I'll get on that. But we can play this next clip.
Okay, this is again from Mr. Alex O'Connor. Ricky Gervais debunked. Now, again, I would not get your theology or epistemology from a comedian. It's just funny quips, okay? But here we go. Here's a intellectual dismantling of a quip.
It's popular for having said. You believe in Ricky Gervais. It's popular for having said.
You believe in one God, I assume, but there are about 3,000 to choose from. So basically, you don't believe in 2,999 gods, and I don't believe in just one more, right?
Which I think is the most unthinking thing that you can say about the issue of God's existence. Imagine you were sat around with your 10 brothers and none of you had ever met your father, and you were discussing, what do you think our father was like? One of your brothers says, well, I think he might have been French. And someone says, no, I'm sure he was American. If you look at the kind of man that Mum's into, I'm sure he might have been American. And, the next brother thinks he's Italian. The next brother thinks that he's German, and it gets round to me, and I say, you know what, guys, I don't think we had a dad. They're like, what? Of course you had a bloody dad. What are you talking about? Like, hold on, guys. Like, you don't believe in the French dad and the American dad and the German dad. You don't believe in any of those dads. I just go one dad further. Mm-hmm. It's like, I think you're making I think you're making a mistake there. Notice that there is a.
I mean, it's the surface level, distinction that Mr. Gervais is trying to appeal to there. It's like, oh, we're so close. Me and you are so close. You only believe in one. I only believe in zero, right? So you denied 2,999. I only deny 3,000. We're so close, right? But again, it's just the idea is that there is a creator there, right? We're not just
exactly. Let Alex finish the clip. There's a couple seconds left.
Okay.
Huge difference between, say, the difference between 10 and 11, or the difference between 5 and 6, and the difference between 0 and 1. It's a difference of quality rather than just quantity.
Right. And that is the point. And that's the point that I was making in that last clip, that if you don't believe in God, then you cannot find meaning at all. It's the difference between 0 and 1. It's the difference between nothing and something. I mean, this is something that Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who is a convert from atheism, but it's ultimately convert from Islam by way of atheism. She was abused in her Islamic circles, converted to atheism. She was sort of one of the adjacent to the New Atheists. She was part of the New Atheist movement. And ran in the same circles as like the four horsemen of the New Atheists, Dawkins and Hitchens and the like, Sam Harris, and good friends of them. And then she converted to Christianity. And it's funny, she did a discussion, a live discussion with Richard Dawkins. And Dawkins went into it thinking that he was going to basically convince her that she wasn't actually a Christian, right? That they were going to have the conversation, and he would be able to show her that, oh, she's really just a cultural Christian, kind of like he's called himself, right? He just sort of, he appreciates the hymns and thinks there's beauty in it and whatnot, and the symbolism is neat, but doesn't actually believe in like a virgin birth or the resurrection. And in the course of the conversation, Dawkins like, no, you actually are a Christian. I think you've lost your mind, but you really actually do believe in this stuff. And when you listen to Ayaan describe her conversion, the biggest step, as she puts it, is coming to the realization that it's a binary choice between something and nothing, and maybe something is the right choice. And that seems simplistic, and she can say it much more eloquently than I can, and it's worth watching that discussion. But that really is the question. And you could put it another way, maybe to make it a little bit more concrete. It's the difference between, is there nothing supernatural? Is everything purely matter? Or is there something beyond the material, right? Do you allow for any amount of the supernatural? Because in order to have any real conception of what love is, of what, motherly affection, that beyond just sort of chemicals firing off in the brain, in order for that to have any meaning actually, in a true sense of the word meaning, you have to believe in something beyond the material. And you really don't get that from a materialist perspective. You only get that from God, right? Like atheists will say that you can be an atheist without being a materialist. You can be an atheist and believe in the soul. You can be an atheist and still have some spirituality, but it really doesn't work. I have yet to hear an atheist make those two parts of a worldview work together and not be contradictory. And psychologists will tell you this, and philosophers of the mind will tell you this, that it is it's very hard to allow for anything that resembles a soul in a materialistic paradigm. So that is the question. Do you believe in something or do you believe in nothing? And I do believe that nihilism is a coherent worldview. I don't think that anyone actually lives it out, but I think that it actually works. Like it's hard
internally
to
consistent.
It is internally consistent, exactly. But there's the rub. It's something or nothing, which is why I kind of like the ontological argument from Anselm, even though I don't think it proves God's existence. I think it does actually kind of point to the central question of is existence itself a perfection, right? Is existence itself a good, right? Is it better to exist than to not exist? That is sort of the key postulate that makes the ontological argument work. And I think that it is better to exist than to not exist. I sign on to that perspective. So anyways, I thought that even though he's responding to a dumb remark from Ricky Gervais, I thought there was actually a poignant point buried in there.
For sure. I mean, I think even Alex O'Connor has said when it comes to like the atheist telos position, you just have to lie to yourself and believe that you have a purpose without, whilst at the same time simultaneously knowing from their worldview that there's no real purpose. You're just kind of here.
Which, by the way, this is also liberal Christianity. Christianity in air quotes. Liberalism, as developed by Bultmann and Schleiermacher. These are Schleiermacher especially. Mostly coming out of the German school of theology. They have completely taken over the universities, and not just Protestants. Catholic, the German Catholic priests are a big issue within Catholicism. Even the Leo and some of the higher echelons will tell you that. I don't know specifically about Leo, but any of your traditional Catholics will tell you that the German priests are an issue because they have absorbed this liberal Christianity, and it's also taken over large parts of South America as well. And it rather aggressively pursues this line of thinking where it's kind of all about, you don't really believe in it physically or in any sort of way that connects to reality, but it's still it's helpful to think of like the resurrection that takes place in your mind every day, or as you sort of orient yourself to the risen Christ, and you anyways, it's all hogwash, but that is it ultimately stems from basically giving in to this nothing postulate. It gives in to nihilism. It says that no, there is no actual meaning, but Christianity can help us pretend that there's meaning in this world. And you will see Christian authors say things just like that. So it's scary. And this is why I kind of picked some of these Alex O'Connor clips. And the next one will, I think, give you it's kind of rage bait in the worst sense of the term, which you'll understand in a second. But one of the topics I want to cover in the next few weeks, I haven't picked an exact date yet. We'll probably give you at least 2 weeks because John and Christian, I want to give you some homework for this one. But I want to talk through critical scholarship, critical biblical scholarship, and the ways that the liberal critical views have really embedded themselves in the universities, and then what the presuppositions that these worldviews, or this view of doing theology, this view of doing biblical scholarship, what the presuppositions are and how it functions, what are the methodologies that they apply, and I hope that it will be profitable and show you how baseless these and how flimsy these views are. But it's also dangerous because if you are unprepared, it can be compelling, it can be convincing. If you don't realize that there is a good response to these ideas, they can make many people that go into universities as strong, Bible believing Christians and come out totally, having deconstructed their faith without even using that term. They'll still call themselves Christians, but ultimately that's what they've done. And so it is dangerous. And so we're taking a bit of a risk here, even bringing it to the table. But I think it's a risk worth taking because if you don't encounter these ideas in a friendly environment where you can actually be presented with some of the truth, then you're liable to fall prey to it out in the wild. So that's sort of the theme of the end of this show here. But yeah, this next clip is Alex O'Connor and Dinesh D'Souza, Dinesh is such a bad debater, man. Maybe he was better in his heyday. There might be some good debates out there that I just haven't seen, but man, he just makes a fool of himself every time I see him talk. And this is rough because this is Alex O'Connor just shellacking this Indian man. So it's sad because Dinesh is the Christian here, but it's a hard watch. And I guess maybe a bit of a teaser for some of the things we might talk about in the future. And I don't even have the answers for all of the contradictions and all the points that Alex makes here. So you got to, I'll just kind of let it sit. But there are answers to these, contradictions that you'll see in the Bible, these biblical errors. But I want you to see it in a strong form to recognize that this isn't something that you can just shrug off. You actually have to be willing to engage. Otherwise, you're going to make a fool of yourself like Dinesh D'Souza.
Right. I was getting physically angry watching this because I'm like, Alex is murdering him live. For my, and part of me is like, well, I don't like Dinesh that much, so it's kind of funny. Like, I'm not that bugged by it. But yeah, no, your point is well taken though, that there are, if you don't know very little, you have just very little foundational understanding, and somebody comes to you and just points out like one contradiction, is like, okay, well, this breaks your whole worldview, especially for a sola scriptura Protestant where all you have to rely upon is scripture, and then somebody's like, okay, well, here's this one contradiction, deal with it, right? It's kind of like, from the Catholic worldview, if you can take out the papacy, well, that's the whole worldview gone, right? So it's very damaging. And if you've just never heard the counter arguments before, you're going to be like, oh, shoot, I'm up a creek, I'm in a boat, I don't got a paddle. What am I supposed to do here?
Right.
Now imagine that the gospel writers had written what you just said. Imagine in the actual text, one of them said he was 33 when he died because of the number 3 and its significance.
Correct.
And another said that he was 34 because of the number 4 and its significance. That would be a contradiction. And in that instance, not just a historical contradiction, but a spiritual and theological one too.
Actually, no, it actually wouldn't.
I'll say it. Come on.
It wouldn't. I'll tell you why.
You don't think that's a contradiction?
No, it's not a contradiction at all, because the gospel writers are constantly
contradicting each other.
No, not contradicting each other. If they were constantly contradicting each other, you wouldn't have spent half an hour on a single event that, frankly, I haven't even heard of. In fact, no one's ever heard of. I've never ever heard anyone discuss this in any context. So
which event?
This prophecy about Hosea. I'll go back and look at all this. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you had a plethora of contradictions, you wouldn't be spending the entire debate on one that I'm sure no one in the audience has heard of either.
Hold on.
But oh well, so okay, you've heard of it. Probably because you've been listening to his YouTube channel, right?
You don't think that this is a highly discussed point of contention in the Gospels, the flight to Egypt and its contradiction with
the flight to Egypt. Look, the flight to Egypt is an important event in the Gospel. I'm not saying.
Dinesh, also, you said, why could you only bring up this one example? Take your pick. The date of Jesus' crucifixion, whether they're to take a staff or not to take a staff, the dating of Jesus flipping the tables at the temple, Mary Magdalene and what she says at the tomb, when the temple curtain rips. In the Gospel of Luke, it says that this happens before Jesus' death, and in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, it says that it happens afterwards. Like, we can go through any of these contradictions that you like, but the problem is that what you're going to tell me is that it's trivial, and then when I try to explain that it's not trivial, you say, oh, well, I haven't even heard of it, and no one else really cares about this. When other people do, by the way, this is a highly discussed point of contention in the Gospel. All I'm asking you to do is say that this is, you know, when I mentioned the staff in my opening statement, and I said that whether or not they take a staff is a totally trivial contradiction. I'm not bothered by that. If I were a Christian, I would say, yeah, of course, because the texts are not going to perfectly accord. But for some reason, Augustine could not accept this, and so comes up with this ludicrous idea of a literal staff and a metaphorical staff that Jesus is talking about. If you were willing to just say, yes, this is a contradiction, but that doesn't upset the method of Christianity, I think it would be a much more defensible and respectable approach. But instead, it seems that you're unwilling to admit that there's even a single contradiction in these texts.
I am saying that the texts are written from 4 different points of view.
Do they contradict each other?
And it is quite possible that on details, Matthew tells you things that are not in Mark, or different than Mark, different than Mark, contradict Mark.
Contradict Mark.
Yes, contradict Mark. And so the point is, here's my point. You're acting, I mean, look at it this way. You would be scoring a point if you could say, God wrote 4 books and they contradict each other. Just like if you're able to say, Dinesh said this in the beginning of the debate and that at the end of the debate, Dinesh is contradicting himself. On the other hand, if we have 2 guys who are here today to go and write an account of this debate, right? And then we look at their accounts, which are authentic, first person. I was their accounts with a lot of detail.
Yep.
And one guy says, for example, the lights were dark. The other guy says the lights were dim. Or one guy says, for example, that Dinesh was sitting at a 45-degree angle. Another guy says it was a 50-degree angle.
Yeah. But
These are
now
not.
imagine,
and then someone goes, Dinesh was sitting at a 43.5-degree angle because he thought this was a way of maximizing his rhetorical effectiveness with the audience. People would be like,
now imagine somebody said, Alex is wearing a blue jacket, and the reason he was wearing a blue jacket, someone said it's a blue jacket, someone else said it's a red jacket. Who cares? You're quite right. But if somebody said specifically, I know that the reason he was wearing a blue jacket was because there's an upcoming election in the UK that's just been announced, and he was trying to represent the Conservative Party. And somebody else said, I know that the reason he was wearing red, and in fact, he told us himself that the reason he was wearing red is because he wanted to support Labour in the upcoming general election in his home country.
Okay, perfect
You would
example.
say that is a contradiction and means that one of you wasn't paying close enough attention, not just to the color of my jacket, but the very message that I was trying to get across.
That could well be true. But what I'm getting at is we know, just from normal experience, that if the 2 of us are sitting in a cafe and we see an accident, these kinds of differences are normal. So let's just say, for example, here's God showing us a revelation, and the revelation can be whatever it is, and you and I write an account of it, and somebody finds that my account of it not only is different than yours, but let's just say, for example, I go, oh, Jesus was wearing a cloak. Another guy goes, he's wearing a robe. For anyone to actually think that this is, in fact, a refutation of the truth of the Bible is ludicrous.
Dinesh
So
won't
anyway,
engage with a single one of he won't
not
engage
at all.
with a
Horrible.
single one of his critiques. He'll just make up his own, and it's so bad.
Watch. I mean, again, it's a little cathartic if you don't like Dinesh.
Yeah,
in a way. But if you're somebody who's like maybe unsure in your faith or not super familiar with the historical accounts, then this can be like a big, like watching, somebody that you respect or somebody that, ostensibly defends your faith get murdered like this can be quite unsettling, right? It can put you on the wrong foot. We've talked about the Matthew Luke distinction before, right? I feel like we've had this conversation before.
On which point?
The contradictions. Well, so the point being here is in Matthew, it details the flight to Egypt. Luke does not mention it. So Alex is like, well, according to Bart Ehrman, that's a contradiction.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't care about Bart Ehrman. And it's Luke doesn't mention it. Matthew does. There's lots of things within the Bible that are meant within the 4 Gospels specifically that are mentioned in one and not in the other. It's just because it's not mentioned doesn't mean that it's not plausible or likely. And even it's like Egypt at the time there were prophecies in Hosea about a flight to Egypt, I believe, and that's why he brought up Hosea in the beginning there. There was Jewish communities in Egypt at the time. There's a specific route between Bethlehem and Egypt. There's there are, Christian historians throughout the 3rd, 4th century or so who claim to know exactly where he was, where the Holy Family visited during their time in Egypt or whatnot. So again, all of this stuff is just you're upset. I get that you're upset that Luke doesn't record the travel to Egypt and just picks back up when they're back in Nazareth, but it's not really that interesting.
Right. Yeah, I think that there are probably more interesting ones than that. But one of the things that we'll get into when we talk, because we will talk about Bart Ehrman, who is just down the road from where I am. Unfortunately, he's a UNC professor, I believe. But he, one of the things that's very clear, and he's just picking up right up on in the stream of his tradition, but he will rule things out as being plausible on the basis of things like Matthew citing this prophecy or this event as fulfilling prophecy. He'll assume that because this event is included in Matthew and he references it as being in fulfillment of a prophecy, and that's one of Matthew's big themes, is that Christ was fulfilling prophecies. Therefore, this was probably included simply to fulfill the prophecy. Like, it's probably just sort of something that he made up to make the prophecy come true. And it's like, what? You're already starting from the position of Matthew wanted to show this theme and was willing to include things that didn't actually happen or didn't have credible sources for in order to prove his point. That is such a baseless, or at least a very questionable starting point. That is not a sure footing to start from at all. And you'll see this again and again and again with these liberal biblical critical techniques, where it's bad presuppositions leading to bad conclusions over and over and over.
Well, if we start from the precept that Matthew was lying the whole time, the Gospels are false. Well, thank you. That's very useful. Do we need to continue this?
Let's. Yeah.
Does it get worse?
It gets worse.
Oh, damn. Jeez. Cash. I mean, what's this guy's name again? Stop it, please. Dinesh, please.
In our format, we've agreed to do a flip where you've been asking me questions now. Let me ask you something.
If you've got something to ask.
Let me turn around and ask you questions in a sort of what I think is a more fundamental mode, because it gets to what the Bible really is.
Let's hear it.
Do you think that the universe had a beginning?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I would suspect yes.
You suspect yes?
Yeah, sure.
How did the writers of the book of Genesis know that?
I have no idea. It could, I mean, if I'm going to be,
they guessed?
If I'm going to be cynical about this, if they did guess, it would be a 50-50 guess. And I also think that if we had scientific...
Would it be a 50-50 guess?
Yeah, because, and it might even be worse than that for you, because if we had some kind of scientific popular hypothesis, because of course the Big Bang might not have been the beginning of everything, who knows, right? But like whatever the popular scientific hypothesis is, if it were pointing to an infinite universe, for example, as Einstein thought we lived in, then I'm sure that people would open Genesis. They would say that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, and say that the earth just means the earth itself, right? Like I think it would be equally easily interpretable on either account.
All right. So one of my professors at Dartmouth was Robert Jastrow. He had
I'm really sorry. Did I miss entirely what Dinesh's point there was?
He's going to try to get around to it. No, he hasn't made the point yet.
Okay, because asking an atheist if he believes the universe has a beginning, I think most people, regardless of their worldview, believe that the universe has some sort of beginning somehow, even if
he's going to try to get there.
Okay,
just wait. There's not much of a payoff, but he makes you wait for it.
Watch him attempt to.
One of the great astronomers of the 20th century.
Sure.
So Jastrow writes in his book, God and the Astronomers, that for 250 years, modern science has been attempting to discover whether the universe had a beginning. Mm-hmm. And you can think of these scientists as ascending a very tall mountain, in which there are many pathways. And for many years, with the steady state hypothesis and so on, there were beliefs that the universe was eternal. It never had a beginning. In fact, that was the prevailing point of view. And then Jastrow argues it's almost as if we reached the top of the mountain and there was a bunch of Hebrew prophets or theologians sitting there who had been there from the beginning. So I'm describing now a skeptic, a true skeptic, and a true scientist describing the scientific shock that attends to a discovery that And I think it is out of the spirit of that discovery for you to go, oh, yeah, I mean, it could have been this. It's like tossing a coin. It isn't like tossing a coin. This is a question that's been argued for 2 centuries and only resolved in the last several decades, and resolved decisively in one side and the other. And the fact that you're not willing to just straight out say, yeah, it is actually an astounding fact that we now know.
No. I mean, look, the scientific method has also revealed to us that the Earth was formed about 4.5 billion years ago. That is much later than the sun. The Old Testament account, the Hebrew Bible account, tells us that it was the other way around. So it got that bit wrong.
All right. So we're, yes, the Bible is not.
So sometimes it gets things right.
No.
Sometimes it gets things wrong. You know.
The Bible is not a science. It's not listing out a scientific.
Well, now hold on a second. You can't now move the goalpost, especially if you're still gonna miss.
It's
a great line.
Alex, you can't move the goalpost. Not like it would matter because you're missing anyways. Damn. Damn, Alex. Yeah, this is really painful. I'm gonna go on a 5-minute diatribe about science this and science that, and then he's just gonna be like, okay, what about the heliocentric model? Like, all right, is that right or no?
Yeah.
Come on, Dinesh. It's a weird movement too, from the contradictions, quotations, between the gospels to go back to, all right, well, modern science believes this.
Right. Modern science believes that the universe had a beginning. And what do you know? In Genesis, it says, in the beginning. Wow. It's like, Alex made the correct point. It's a binary. You either had a beginning or you didn't have a beginning. So, at best, this proves that it was a lucky guess from his perspective. Like, this does not prove anything. It's just it's such a belabored point for so little payoff.
Well, there's no possible payoff there. How does this get away from any of Alex's points?
And then just name drops with some famous astronomer who wrote a book.
Yeah, well, it's like, I would push back on Alex. If Alex said the world was 6 billion years old, I'd be like, okay, well, there's no way for us to actually know that, right?
Right.
Like, the scientists themselves disagree on that. So I mean that's just meaningless nonsense. There's more contradictions in that than there is in the supposed contradictions in the Bible. Like, there's no way for you to actually know that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah. But
because then all that is stacking sources. It's like, my source says this and my source says this. It's like, that's not.
But part of what makes this so frustrating is, as you'll see in the next couple minutes, but Dinesh, I mean, he's probably an old Earth believer anyway, and so he's giving in that point, and we got to finish it because it's so painful, and I cringed through it, so you have to too.
Well, it is properly titled Alex O'Connor Painfully Exposing Jesus Nonsense. Now, it's not Jesus nonsense. It's just Dinesh explaining nonsense. Dinesh is kind of stupid. And again, yeah, like you said, people revered him.
Yeah.
And I remember in conservative circles, it's like, Dinesh D'Souza. And it's like, why? why
he must have had a heyday where he actually came across as intelligent. I just haven't seen it yet. But
well, I mean, to be fair, Ben Shapiro had a good run when he was debating, college students.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, let me back up.
The issue of the origin of the universe is extremely critical.
You just told me that Genesis predicted or knew about or somehow knew about the scientific hypothesis of the origin of the universe. Then when I pointed out another scientific observation that doesn't accord with Genesis, you tell me that Genesis isn't a scientific text to begin with.
Well, if you read Genesis, it is making a astounding claim which pertains to God. Obviously, God created the heavens and the earth.
Is it making a scientific claim or not? Is it telling us how the universe scientifically formed or not?
It's not telling us how the universe scientifically formed, because if it did, they would be outlining the history of the Big Bang.
Then what's the relevance of bringing this up in the first place?
Because it is stating a conclusion, not a process. It's not telling you how the universe was formed. Right. It's not telling you about...
It also doesn't tell us how the sun was formed, but it tells us that it was formed after the earth was. It tells us that that's the case. That's wrong. It's incorrect.
Show me.
Well, I don't have a Bible.
Okay.
Well, I would just say, show me. Like, can you possibly prove to me right now that the sun was made before the earth? Like, could you possibly prove that to me right now? you might logically infer based upon like your evolutionary principles or your Big Bang theory, right?
Right.
But there's no way you can actually prove that to me right
No,
now.
the best you can do is extrapolate.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And if I just don't agree with your foundations, or does the scientific does the scientific method pass the scientific method, or does evolution of the Big Bang pass any of the scientific method that these people like to push up? It's like, no, you can't possibly test this. There's no way to. It's not possible. It's a theory. It's fine.
I've read that passage maybe a dozen times. I have never spotted this contradiction that you're describing, but I'll go back and look at it again. But again,
Another
What day is
appeal
it
to
that God makes
ignorance.
It's
so painful.
I'm too stupid to understand the answer to this one, so I'm going to ignore it.
the sun and day 4, either it's day 3 or day 4, something around there.
You're right, but
when's
the
light
mainstream
created?
of the Christian tradition does.
When's the
It
heaven and
obviously
the earth
can't
created?
be day 4 because the concept of day in the original Hebrew doesn't mean day.
Sure, but day 4 comes after day 1, right?
Well,
How long the
it's
day is.
describing obviously epochs or periods.
Yeah,
yes.
so actually it's much worse because now the sun is created much later than the earth.
See, this is the thing. I hate Dinesh's whole worldview here. I hate arguing from an evolutionary, like basically atheist science worldview from the Bible. I think it's such a bad foundation. You know,
I
I
told
know
you to
some
make you
people
mad.
try and make it work, but it's so bad. Like you're already playing into their hand on everything. Like if you believe in like the Big Bang, where the entire universe was at one point smaller than the head of a pin, and then exploded into what we have now. Like I'm just gonna look at you like you're an insane person. Like nobody can mechanistically tell me how that happens, or how they could possibly have any intuition that the universe was at some point this way, or what caused it to be this way, or what led up to this, or what happened after. It's all nonsense. None of this is justifiable.
Well, not necessarily. Well, show me.
I don't know. I mean, we can
okay.
we can read through that. We can find Genesis.
Yeah,
if you like.
okay.
I don't know if that would be the best use of our time. I mean, we could do it if you really want to. But what I'm trying to say is that like, it's not astonishing.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Why not? It's not astonishing to me that like if you're making claims about the origin of the universe, especially in the case where if it is making a specific claim in the knowledge that there's a sort of infinite hypothesis and a beginning hypothesis, to take a 50-50 stab, it's not amazing to me. It would be more amazing to me if everything lined up and it gave us an otherwise unknowable historical scientific account of the beginning of the universe. But as you say, that's not even what Genesis is trying to do.
Yeah, I don't know. Applying, in a way, I agree with Alex. Trying to justify the Bible through the lens of modern science and like modern scientific theories, whatever they may be, seems like a fool's errand. Like, I don't know why we're doing this.
Yep.
Especially when you don't know what the Bible says about it and you're saying that it doesn't contradict and it is true.
Right.
That's rough.
Like I said, the worst kind of rage bait. The rage bait where we're angry at someone misrepresenting our own true position.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, there's a direction or there's a reason to cover this, and I'm trying to set up a future stream here where we'll get more into some of the actual presuppositions that are being posited. If you are not prepared to answer these sorts of questions, then you too may look like a complete ass. So let that be a warning to you. Any closing thoughts, fellas, before we head out tonight?
I'm tired, boss.
Did we have any more support? Thought we did.
We did. We had a couple Ko-Fis. Yeah, let me read them. Thank you for reminding me.
Sure.
All right, first one. This is from O. Jarrett. This was early on. He said, I was predestined to be sleepy and will have to watch tomorrow. Have a great night, gents. Christ is king. Yes, he is.
Christ is king. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. And the next one, Joshua Howard sent in and said, found it. I'm not sure what you're referring to, sir, but I'm glad you found it. Praise God. All righty. And we do appreciate the support. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We will see you again next Tuesday. And God bless, gents. Thanks.
Good night, fellas.
Be out there.